All right, good evening and welcome everyone to the November 16th, 2021 Menlo Park Fire Protection District board meeting. Michelle, would you please call the roll?
Director Bernstein? I don't think he's on yet. Director Jones?
Here.
Director Crawley?
Present.
Director Solano?
Here.
Director McLaughlin?
Here.
And Director Bernstein, you're on. Let's see if I can get him to unmute. Director Bernstein?
I'm present.
Thank you.
I was trying to unmute, but you wouldn't let me according to my screen.
I would never do that.
Would you please rise and join me in the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic
for
for
which
which it stands,
one
one nation,
Under
under God,
with
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, prior to the start of this meeting, the board met in closed session beginning at 4 p.m. and there are no reportable items from that meeting. Michelle, is there any public comment?
If anybody has any public comment, please raise your hand, or you can use *9 if you called in. And give me a moment because things are a little different for this meeting. And I see no raised hands, no public comments.
All right, thank you. Chief Schaefer, with your approval, I'm going to move your report after the presentations. Is that, I'm sorry, Chief, is that?
Absolutely.
Problem with that? All right, very good, thank you.
Great.
That brings us to our first, we have a special presentation tonight. Michelle, are you able to display it?
Yes, give me one moment. Okay.
All right, thank you. After many years of service to our community, our district, Tom Pressing is retiring from his duties. On unanimous approval of the board, we accepted and approved the commendation that you see before you to honor Tom's many contributions. I know he's done it with in his volunteer capacity, and prior to that in a professional capacity in this area, this community. So I want to thank you, Tom, so much for all that you do. You've always been that, voice of reason, and you can be very persuasive when you address a topic. So again, I want to thank you for your many years of service, and I want to invite any other directors to offer any congratulations they may have. Virginia?
Yes, I'd like to thank Tom for everything he has done for ADAPT and just preparedness in general for our fire district. So many of us learned a lot from you, Tom. So many of us, even the most seasoned leaders in preparedness in the community. And every time you spoke, we all learned something new. And I think that you've made all of the communities in our fire district a much safer and more prepared place to be. And I hope that we can continue to lean on you in some way, because I know you're going to be terribly, terribly missed. Thank you so much for everything you've done for us, Tom.
All right, Chuck?
I too want to thank Tom. Much of what I learned and was able to pass on in terms of training for others, I learned from Tom. I attended almost all of the drills that he coordinated. I studied his Get Ready training and used it as a model for the trainings that I offered. And I've learned much from Tom, and I appreciate that. And I think the people in the district have learned much from Tom. And so thank you, Tom, for all you have done.
And Robert.
I want to say also, thank you very much for your service that you have provided for the district and all of the volunteers that you have helped in so many ways. And in particularly setting Atherton Cert Group up as a model that we all can kind of look to try to aspire to get our group working towards. So I want to wish you well on your retirement. I hope it's just a retirement from active life, but you're still you still engage in a secondary fashion with the CERT group because you still got a lot to give to the community and to your fellow brethren volunteers that's in the business of CERT. So thank you once again and enjoy your retirement.
All right, Tom, I don't know if you have any parting words.
Jim?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Rob, pardon me.
No, Jim? Tom, you're the gold standard, man. With your training and experience was invaluable, not only to the fire district, but as you heard, to us as board members individually. So thank you again, Tom, and enjoy some free time. Thank you, Jim.
All right, thank you. Tom, your turn.
Fire Board Directors and Chief Schaefer, thank you very much. It's been my honor to serve Stanford University for 18 years in our district communities of Atherton, Menlo Park, East Palo Alto, and South San Mateo County unincorporated areas for the past 7 years in training our citizen responders to be prepared, resilient, response capable, and recovery able in a district-wide disaster. Your recognition of me also goes out to all those who worked with me through these 7 years in this endeavor. Stanford UIT CERT, the former MPFPD CERT and CCM advisory boards, ADAPT, EPA CERT, and now REPACT and MPC Ready. As I leave this emergency response arena, and I do so reluctantly, but because of my bad heart, I have to, I ask you to commit to preserving our community-based citizen disaster response organizations of ADAPT, MPC Ready, and REPACT, whose citizens will be out in the streets, reducing death, minimizing injuries, and bringing calm to the chaos for 3 to 7 days of a disaster until we can receive the able assistance from our police and fire professionals, responders whose disaster response priorities will necessarily be engaged elsewhere. I wish to also thank Michelle for all your assistance over these years. To all of you, to all the three communities, to all those that I had the pleasure of working with, remain well and Godspeed.
All right, Tom, on behalf of the entire board, again, thank you so much for your years of service. And we hope you're a familiar face around the district. So.
You are most welcome.
All right, brings us to our next item, presentation regarding artwork at Station 4. A couple months ago now, Mr. Jim Lewis approached me with an idea of doing an art piece at Station 4. And I know he's done some homework investigating various installations in the area and beyond. I thought it would be useful for the board to hear his findings, and we can discuss whether or not it's something that we want to pursue. So with that, Jim, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, President McLaughlin and members of the board. I'm Jim Lewis, and I'm speaking today about the topic of considering public art at Fire Station number 4. As you know, the topic of public art was briefly mentioned during both the September and the October board meetings. While driving by nearby cities, one can often find public art located in public facilities, including fire stations. For instance, a recent rebuilt fire station in Palo Alto, located on the busy corner of Embarcadero Road and Newell Road, included a piece of public art. In its case, it's a welcome wagon with fire department images of an axe, a fire hose, a fire extinguisher, and a ladder. Allow me to share with you a photograph taken of that fire station. In Mountain View, fire station number 2 has a wonderful sculpture created by an international artist. It displays a firefighter's coat, hat, boots, and is complemented by 2 curious dogs at its base. The sculpture was made of bronze, which holds up well in an exterior setting. At a fire station in Los Altos, an abstract piece of stainless steel art was created that can be seen from a very busy adjacent street, being Grant Road. Of course, public art is not limited to fire stations. The general public can see various forms of public art in and around town, including civic centers, large developments, and in public parks. This adds a touch of humanness to an otherwise static piece of brick and mortar. It brings culture to a community. Each of the cities you serve, including Atherton, East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and the County of San Mateo, each displays various forms of public art. Thus, if you decide to include public art at fire station number 4, it'll be consistent with what the public has become accustomed to seeing in other cities. One can also find at other fire stations a piece of public art as a popular image of a Dalmatian dog, as you can see on the screen. In fact, across the country, one can also find pieces of public art at many fire stations, which a quick search on Google can confirm. Michelle, do you have the next? There we go, which is a sample. On this page, there's actually 5 pages of various public art at fire stations, very creatively done. Thus, public art at fire stations is not at all unusual, but in many settings, quite common. Any discussion of public art at a fire station probably should acknowledge that you already provide to the general public. For instance, at fire station number 6 on Oak Grove Avenue, one can find 1, a little free library, 2 benches, which I might comment are very often used, 3, a public level drinking fountain for adults, children, and pets, along with 4, a display recognizing Michael Reif, the honorary mayor of Hoover Street. In terms of paying for public art, there are several options to consider. In addition to it being part of a construction budget, there are a variety of grant programs available, including at the federal, state, and county levels. For instance, there's a national competition for grants available from the National Endowment for the Arts, based in Washington, D.C. They have grant programs available ranging from $10,000 to $150,000. California also has a well-established art commission. As the fire district station number 4 is located in the County of San Mateo, You can also reach out to the San Mateo County Art Commission. If needed, they may have a very particular interest in participating with you. Given Alameda de las Pulgas is a heavily traveled street, any public art there would likely be seen by a lot of folks. This completes the presentation. I'd be pleased to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Mr. Lewis, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to make that presentation to the board, and I know it'll be initiate further conversation and discussion on the topic. So again, I appreciate your interest in promoting arts in the community and promoting something that would make our stations even more attractive and welcoming to the community that we serve. So thank you again. All right, Chief, if you would go next with your report, and then we'll do the OEM report after that.
Okay, can you hear me okay, Director?
Yes.
So
Oh, you have to turn the volume off on one of your devices. I think you have multiple devices open for the meeting.
how is that? Is that better?
Yes.
Sorry about that. My computer was freezing, so I called in just in case it froze up and I could move to that. So Chief's report. So I had 3 items on the Chief's report. The first one was the Station 4 update. And if you've read through that, basically we're almost 50% complete for the overall project. It talks about different percentages that were complete for mechanical, plumbing, electrical. Those should be complete within about 2 to 3 weeks. I think we're about 2 weeks behind schedule, basically due to pandemic-related material shortages. However, more personnel working is bringing that timeline back up to being on time. We've had a couple of minor change orders, but all in all, after discussion with John Hitchcock, who's our project manager, things are going really well with Station 4. And I think most of the directors are probably driving around town and have seen it, but it's really taken a nice shape, and it's looking really good up there. And we've been very happy with the contractor. Second, the management audit. I put the timeline. We did receive 4 responses to our RFP, and they'll be those responses will be gone through by members of staff, and then we will be discussing those with the board of directors. And the last item was the live fire simulator that the board approved earlier in the year. Happy to report that that has been completed. The training's been completed on it. The main personnel that are responsible for that are Captain Kelly and Battalion Chief Babcock. And of course, that live fire is run under the training division, which is Chief Ellis. There were a lot of people involved in getting this project taken care of. It wouldn't do it justice if I tried to give every name, but there was a lot of personnel out there working. We have a lot of people that are part of our live fire group. I went out there on the day that they were doing the training, and the response I got was it was better than they had anticipated. So they give some realistic training. It's 2-story, you can move interior walls. So all the crews out there are really happy with it, and we look forward to beginning the training with it. And it's going to give us some realistic fire training. So thank you very much for allowing us to buy that. And that was the 3 items on my Chief's report for this month.
Any questions for Chief Schaefer? All right, well, thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
that brings us to the OEM presentation.
Hi, Michelle. Can you hear me? I'm on the line.
Yes, Ryan, I can hear you.
Okay, if you would allow me to share my screen.
You're a co-host and you should be able to do that.
Okay, let's see. Okay. Okay,
you
is am I good?
I don't see your screen yet.
Let's see. Screen 2, share.
Oh, there we go.
Here we go.
Yes.
It's
There you go.
opening up. My apologies. Oh, back, slideshow, beginning. Okay, are we seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, President McLaughlin and Board of Directors. I was asked at the EPREP committee to provide this OEM update to the full board in regards to the progress and some of the things that we're working on. The department has made great strides in closing out many planned tasks within our CERT strategic plan. We launched a new CERT website, developed volunteer management plan, established key support volunteer positions, and are working on drafting our new CERT SOP. The department is also working on a registration application to link CERT members that want to be fire district affiliated to those that just want to be good Samaritans and work within their neighborhood groups. We have yet to close out our shelter management training. We've been planning that with Red Cross, but with COVID, we've been able to schedule a time, but that will come around. This will be another good training opportunity for our CERT members if they have an interest in seeing mass care disaster operations. There's a lot of deployment opportunities for people to get hands-on training in that, so we want to extend that training to our members. Many times the Red Cross looks for trained CERT volunteers, so we think this would be an added value. We recently just recruited some new OEM volunteers to help support our disaster caches that will be responsible for towing these resources into the affected neighborhoods so local CERTs can organize and deploy. We have a new part-time person on board. Her name is Melanie Twomley. She's been helping out with our new marketing material district-wide preparedness programs. So we're looking to close out this item C1 in the near future. We're also trying to get some volunteers interested in putting together our CERT volunteer recognition and appreciation program. There's been a lot of conversations around this, and we too feel the same way that our volunteers should be recognized. We're actually looking to tailor this to the month of April. That is actually the Volunteer Appreciation Month, so it makes sense to do it in April if we can, and also work with some of the other volunteer organizations, not-for-profits, and see if we can do some sort of a combined event. But we're still looking on support from that, but we're looking to get that closed off. Those that are registered to our CERT Connect newsletter, this is something that we've first never done before. It's a way for us to send out newsletters to our CERT community to tie them back to the curriculum to which they went through the program. It enhances their core competency. Each newsletter is built off one section of the CERT module and is theme-based. We just recently started to roll out individual competency quizzes at the end of these newsletters to test your skills, and we do a raffle as a preparedness giveaway. We also tie this to the National Preparedness Calendar, which promotes other additional hazards. We recorded 22 community preparedness activities to date, and we have a couple more that we're going to do before the end of the year. We continue to push them out to our membership and through our website. I believe currently we're promoting disaster response and disability approaches for citizen responders. The department continues to look for ways to enhance our website capability and ensure that we're aligned with county, state, and federal government emergency preparedness messages and information and training. There's a new event that I'll talk about a little bit later that we just posted this week. The department continues to roll out continuous education and training to the community and CERT members. We've done classes on incident command system, emergency communications on the FRS radios, hazmat response, flood preparedness. We've been doing our Red Cross Ready every second Wednesday of the month. Our Fire Prevention Bureau helped out with our wildland preparedness program. We just completed our earthquake brace and bolt presentation, which provides funding for seismic retrofitting for houses built during a specific era. A CERT training and exercise plan was developed and implemented. We'll be working on doing refresher skills day with many drills in 2022. It was mentioned that CERT refresher was a big thing for the CERT members, so we're trying to get that out. And in fact, this Saturday we have a medical triage and mass casualty CERT refresher day Saturday. So that information is on our website. So if you look to register, you can do that now. We continue to promote the CERT program. The flyer on the left you can see is from our summer session. We're also working toward bringing CERT into the workplace. We've been talking with Ravenswood as our pilot and making sure that we can test it out there and get them involved. And then we're going to try to get this in many more doors in the businesses and throughout the community. The department is also focused on 5 big preparedness programs. The first one obviously being the CERT program, which is an all hazard based program. It's about 2 to 3 days long. The target capability is focused around response, but it's an all hazard program. The second program is our Red Cross Ready program. It's another all hazard preparedness program. It's less than 2 to 3 days. It's only 90 minutes. But the people that go through the program, they get general information on all hazards. They also get an emergency preparedness flip chart, an emergency radio, a personal preparedness bag. So that program's been really taking off, and we got a lot of good volunteers helping us out as instructors. The third program is our CPR first aid. That program obviously focuses on medical preparedness. We were looking to launch that actually Saturday, December 4th. Marketing information is already gone out in regards to that class. The fourth program we're focused on is Stop the Bleed. Primary focus of this program is obviously medical preparedness. This program provides basic principles for how to identify and treat life-threatening bleeding using tourniquets. A person can bleed out in less than 5 minutes, so this class is so important, especially as our nation struggles with active shooter incidents. And then the fifth class we're promoting is our advanced ICS, and this is specifically for our first responders, multi-agency response capabilities. It's focused on the National Incident Management System. It'll help support operational coordination, and the target focus and the capability is obviously emergency response. So we're trying to have some fun here as well, and not just do training, education, and emergency plans. So we're doing a disaster preparedness game night. We're looking to launch that next year. This game night is an all-hazard bingo board, and then we're also going to try to tie that into hands-only CPR. You can see some of the themes on the board are run, hide, fight, drop, cover, and hold, don't panic during an earthquake, help your neighbor. So it's a fun board, and we hope that the preparedness messages will stick with the attendants that participate in the program as another way to enhance that mental responsiveness. Program calendar, this is a big thing of mine as far as just ensuring continuity and that we have a systematic process so that we're pushing out deliverables on a scheduled time. You can see we already started building this out with our CERT newsletter, when we offer our medic basic first aid class, when we offer our Red Cross Ready class, when we offer CERT refresher, and then other items as well as when we move the LRAD from one location to the other location. So this just ensures continuity and systematically that we're measuring our outputs and that things are getting done on a scheduled time, and that it's predictable and it's routine and it's reliable. We enhance our marketing and social media. We were able to bring on a person part-time in capacity to develop our marketing material. Our goal is to develop professional products that will promote disaster preparedness and response. Attached is a postcard flyer in the right-hand corner that we gave out during the Seminary Oak Park concert. One of our volunteers was going to be out there. I think they had registered 45 people in attendance. They went around promoting the Red Cross Ready program. And so you can see that we actually did one of our CPR postings at the post office. We're also going to be at Starbucks and schools. So a lot of our material is getting out to those local businesses and to the community to bring in that attraction. We plan to launch our advanced ICS class in October, but we had to reschedule. So we're planning that for next year. Again, this class promotes multi-agency response coordination and incident management planning, advancing that NIMS concept. Our training and operations division just recently completed the active shooter training at SLAC, so which this class will be great for first line supervisors, and it helps to promote that multi-agency emergency response from a command, control, and coordination perspective. So we're excited to bring these NIMS classes into the new year and build those multi-agency response capabilities for our first responders. We completed our disaster volunteer management annex, which provides guidance to our department on how we deal with affiliated and non-affiliated volunteers based on disaster response guidelines and emergency management standards. And it's also based on the FEMA curriculum of developing and managing volunteers. We're in the process of refreshing our CERT Standard of Operation Procedure Manual. We're hoping to get input from our CERT members so there's clear processes and expectations in place when it comes to program affiliation and those that just choose to be good Samaritans within their neighborhood. So that's currently under development, and we're looking to get that out to our CERT members for input and feedback. One of the things we do here in our department is we do this disaster remembrance newsletter. It promotes lessons learned from previous disasters. This month, we highlighted the campfire, acknowledging our task force that was deployed to that. The picture on the left, my family in 2007 was a victim to Hurricane Harvey. They lost all their possessions. So personally, I have some experience in lessons learned from a disaster perspective when it affects you. But this is just a way to capture some of the, I wouldn't say pitfalls, but some of the lessons learned operationally from plannings, from multi-agency coordination, from the incident command post to volunteer management to EOCs. So we promote this every month, and we highlight a newsletter, and we circulate that around to our command staff operationally. We're in the process of building up our emergency management point of contact database so that we can do outreach with key partners and assist with emergency training and outreach, and then also storing their emergency plans within the system so that we're better able to coordinate with them during an event. FEMA says that the planning process is not complete until the EOPs are shared with the first responders. So this system will allow us to retain those plans so that we can assess them, work within them, and then also work with the point of contact within that facility or within that organization. You can see from this screen, there's a drop-down list, so you can easily query between healthcare, churches, police, fire, whatever organization you're looking for, find the point of contact for that facility, and if they have an emergency operation plan or a pre-incident plan attached to the profile, we can obviously do interagency response coordination through that. And then we produced our last COVID report in June. These reports assisted with keeping the community informed of COVID cases, vaccination, medical calls, and tracking. I believe we produced like over 50 reports throughout the year, sometimes doing it weekly. We also participated and helped out the county when they were trying to get the outreach efforts done in East Palo Alto. I was out there myself. We extended this out to some of our CERT members as a way to engage as well. And that concludes my presentation, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Ryan? Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I have about 6 questions. You want me to take them? And
Sure.
I'll just do one, and
Let's
then
knock
we
'em
can
off.
move them around with the other board members. Or do you want me just to do them all at once?
Well, let's launch in, and if you get long, I'll throw aside.
Okay.
Cut
All
him
right. Just let me know. Okay. Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Good. How are you, Director Solano?
Fine. This the consultant management report that was approved by, well, first when I was on emergency prep with Chuck Bernstein, we had gone forward with it. What's the progress on the report?
I believe it's at Chief Schaefer's position right now as far as the draft report. And that's all that I know of right now. I believe the report has been concluded and it's waiting approval based on the fire chief. Is what I understand.
Okay, I'd like to know from my fellow board members who were interviewed by the consultants. Chuck, were you interviewed by the consultants?
I was not interviewed.
Robert, were you interviewed?
Yes, I talked to them for a little bit.
All right, great. Virginia, were you?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. And Jim, we had spoken and you said you were interviewed, correct?
That's correct.
All right, well, last year Chuck and I, in fact, I chaired the committee last year and Chuck and I were on the committee and we weren't interviewed, and this report's already in a final draft, Ryan?
Well, I would ask, Rob, if I could, Chief Schaefer, is it on your desk?
Director, it is on my desk. It's still in a draft form.
In draft status? Rob, if, you and Chuck were not interviewed, I think we should take that up separately with the chief and we'll explore where we go from there. It's, you two certainly, your views are valued and should be reflected in that report. So we'll, perhaps we take that up separately with Chief Schaefer.
I'll take that up with Constant Associates. I did not get a list of who they interviewed, but I can definitely circle back with them.
Well, Chief, so that you know, I individually went on their website where it said contact, information, and I had sent a contact email to them saying I wasn't interviewed, referenced this report. I never got anything back, and that was 3 weeks ago. So I'm a little disappointed in our consultants, to say the least. Ryan, do we have the neighborhood CERT leaders identified?
When you say neighborhood groups leaders, I know Andres is on the call. He might be better able to answer that question. But I know that we do outreach with the neighborhood groups like EPACT and MPC Ready and ADAP. As far as neighborhood CERT members, I don't believe that we have a list, and that's what we're doing right now with those that want to serve in an affiliated role and represent their neighborhood to the fire district. That when we do the survey, they'll be able to give us their name and their contact, and they'll be the point person for their neighborhood. But to answer your question, I don't believe that we have a list of any specific person in the neighborhood identified. We have a membership list of all CERT members that went through the program, but nobody's has stepped up and said, hey, I'm the CERT point person for, let's say, Bellhaven. We don't have that level of leadership currently.
All right, so then you don't have a neighborhood CERT leader list identified, correct?
Yeah, I would say that would be correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The contract that we have with Menlo Park, where you are the emergency manager for them, what's the status of that contract? Is it still ongoing?
No, that contract elapsed months ago during Chief Chappellholm's term. And those were for specific items, I think, associated within the contract. But that contract has been lapsed for quite some months now. So the answer is no, we don't have a contract with City of Menlo Park.
So you're not doing any of the management stuff for them anymore?
Over a year. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
over a year, I think.
What was that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Over a year. I don't know the specifics, but it's been well over a year.
Well, this is the first time that I've heard that it's lapsed and it wasn't in any type of a status realm. So, and then my last question is the current CERT capabilities that we have within our fire district. Are those people given some type of background checks or something, or are background checks required for them?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and that's the one thing that we're doing with our CERT SOP is that we need to separate the majority of the membership database from those that want to be affiliated. And when I say affiliated, that means tied to the organization in some capacity, in a professional capacity as a volunteer, with the code of conduct, the background checks, knowing that they've been trained, competencies there, and that they're evaluated. So right now, we're going to be doing a poll of our database. Andreas is sending out a poll to find out who wants to be actually affiliated so that we can start that process and start credentialing, training, and tying them to the organization in a response or volunteer capacity if they choose to do that. That's why in the presentation I talked about those that want to be affiliated versus those that just want to be good Samaritans. So to answer your question, we'll have a better list beginning of the new year with those that want to take on more of a leadership position with the organization.
Okay, so the thing that really concerns me, and it's been concerning me for quite a few years, is the legal responsibility that the district has to take for some of these volunteers in case they get injured. And that's what's always concerned me. And I know the state has this overall form that doesn't really make any sense. But are we going forward with any type of insurance or any type of liability protection for the fire district so that if these volunteers do get hurt at some function, either a drill or an actual disaster, where that they're covered insurance wise?
I think the county is going that direction with the disaster service workers. They're looking at that. I know Dan Belleville will be on this call in regards to the hazard mitigation plan. I know there's been conversations about DSW certain CERT volunteers affiliated with the organization so that those liabilities are actually mitigated. But for disaster service workers, they've got to be sanctioned training and they have to be actual activations. So for the fire district, what that means is we can take out a separate insurance policy, is what I've been told from Andreas, as far as he has more knowledge of the disaster service worker, or we can DSW them, but that's got to go through the municipality because the municipality actually has the authorization and the jurisdictional responsibility. So if we have, let's say you, myself, our disaster service workers tied to the CERT program through the fire district, and there's an activation at the city of Menlo Park or East Palo Alto, as long as the city recognizes us and allows us to be disaster service workers on their behalf, they're covered. If not, we, the district, if they want to take a unique role, would have to find out ways to protect them, whether that's taking out an insurance policy in regards to like a volunteer cadre.
Well, yeah, and you and Andreas have as far as I'm concerned, a huge task here trying to put this all together when us as a special district really doesn't have the authority under emergency preparation or management, because that responsibility falls within the cities and the county, correct?
Right, absolutely.
Right.
But our role would be to provide the level of preparedness and training that they go into the CERT program. We can say that this person is capable as a CERT trained member of the fire district that the city could use as a disaster service worker. So it's a partnership. They hold
Exactly.
they hold the authority, and we provide the training.
Rob,
Right.
if I may, Rob.
I'm done, Jim. I'm finished.
Ryan, are those issues addressed in the report? The draft report?
They talk about the disaster service worker, yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Are there any other directors? Any questions? I see Lynn Bramlett has some comments. Oh, I'm sorry, before Lynn speaks, Robert, if
Yeah, thank you, Ryan, for the report. It's the second time I'm hearing it, and it's getting better and better to me every time I hear it. I think it's providing the structure and meat on the bone, so to speak, that's been kind of absent to some extent from the previous work that has been done along that line. And so I congratulate you and Andreas for taking these bold steps to try to pull it together, because that DSW and members wanting to get involved, some other members not wanting to get involved. I think this is kind of really separate the wheat from the tare at this point in time, who wants to be involved in how deep they want to get involved into certain work.
All right. Chuck, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the root of this report from Constant on the program, particularly the volunteer program. I know the board requested this, and I think the board had the thought that there might be better ways to do this. There might be more resources needed. I think it's problematic having it go through staff review. I think the draft report ought to be provided to the board members so that we can see what the consultant has come up with before there's any editing that goes on and so forth. So I'd like to request that we get a copy of the draft report.
Well, can I respond to that, Jim? I don't know if Virginia want to respond to it, but at our meeting, last meeting, the conversation was around what direction it should go in terms of the report. And it was my understanding that it was going to go to staff, to the chief, to kind of deal with a lot of points that or areas that may not be as clear. And then from the chief comments, it then would get distributed to the board, so that the board then, as an overall, look at the report and give any kind of input into the report, the draft form, because we debated, I think, in our committee whether it should come back to the committee and then go to the board, or go to board and then whatever comments from the board get directed back to the committee to move forward to try to help work through the final draft. So that's what my understanding of how the process is going to work. And I'm not sure why you didn't get interviewed, but I think it's probably something needs to be followed up on. But at least you have an opportunity to see the draft, because basically what the chief and his staff is going to do is, making sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, kind of thing.
Is this scheduled to come back to your committee, Virginia?
So that was kind of a little ambiguous. So we thought that we might want to discuss it tonight. So I think that there were different interpretations. I thought it was supposed to come back to our committee, but then there might have been confusion that, or misinterpretation from various parties that it was going to go back to the board for review. And I think Robert and I, chime in here, Robert, if I'm getting this wrong, but I thought that, we would discuss it and we'll figure out what the board wants. I'm happy either way. If y'all want it to come back to the board first, that's fine. If you want it to come back to the committee, that's fine. The board did charge the committee with, kind of being the manager of all of this process, but we're happy either way, however the board wants to do this, because ultimately it's going to be a board document. And I understand where Chuck's coming from as well. So, I thought that we'd have this discussion today. It doesn't matter to me either way.
Chuck?
Yes, well, I definitely think it should go back to the committee for discussion and implications and so forth before it comes to the board for direction. But I, as a board member, would very much like to see the draft report in its original format before it's edited and so forth. So I'd like to request a copy.
I would favor that it go back to the committee as well, especially it appears that there are two members that were not interviewed. as part of this process, I think that needs to be addressed. And perhaps, again, Virginia, if the, your committee has management of the report, that's the place where that can be addressed.
Well, so Jim, yeah, that's fine. That's how I interpreted it, but again, it was a little ambiguous, and if that's what the board wishes, I'm happy to do that, but I don't know if Robert has anything to add to this. Either way is fine with me.
Yeah, Robert, I saw your hand.
Yeah, my comments initially was to try to get point of clarification of the meeting. And because, I'm the one myself in terms of process, felt that it should go to the board. After the drafts come out, it should go to the board, because I don't know what we're going to be able to tell the consultants. We don't want to influence how the draft report what it's going to look like. It should go in, as Chuck mentioned, it should go to the peer form to the board, let the board look at it. The board then kind of sift through it and kind of figure out if there are any areas of further investigation that need to be looked at. I'd rather hear that from the board rather than myself filtering things out for the board. And then you would have our edits rather than your edits of the draft form. And so that's where we was going back and forth on which direction it should go, because I would like to get everybody's opinion on it. And then you direct the committee, the board direct the committee in terms of those areas we need to pursue with the consultant and with staff.
Yes, so Jim,
A question for Stephen Miller. Stephen, it's in draft form now. At what point does it become a public document? And is it now, or?
well,
It's not an easy question to answer without having seen it. I'm not sure I know exactly what it is, but there is an exemption from the Public Records Act for drafts. But as soon as the report is shared with the board or with the committee, it would be a public record ordinarily, even in draft state. So that's the best answer I can give you without actually seeing the document.
Jim?
And if I could just add one more thing, which is that we're a little far afield from the presentation topic. So I'll just throw that out there.
Thank you.
So can I just add one
Virginia?
quick thing about the process? Yeah, just to clarify, I have no problems having it go to the board. I was just trying to have it go through the traditional committee process. I mean, which, would have been have this draft go back to the committee to review, and then we go forward and moving it to the whole board with board input, and then, board discussion and board direction. But we can skip that step if Robert's, more comfortable with this with how he wants to do it.
Well,
like I said, I
this is-
think at the end of the day, it's going to still come back to the board, right, for discussion.
Right.
So that's where I think the difference was between Robert and me
No, I
in
think
terms
that-
of that extra step.
I think
Again,
the
to come back,
difference was that, Virginia, you were pretty adamant about coming back to committee, and I was adamant about going to board. So that's the way it ended
Right.
up. And I deferred everything to you as president, chairman of the committee to make that decision. So
Right,
that's how it
right.
got left.
Yeah.
I'm concerned that the report could be made public without the benefit of interviews of two of the directors. So I would ask that, if the chief could consult with Stephen Miller and, can it be given back to the consultant at this point, with direction to finish the task they were given, which was included interview of all the directors. I don't know how it could be considered complete, and I don't think it should be in the public realm until that one task, and maybe others, but until that task is completed. And then, this matter can be taken up by the committee at the December meeting, and you can sort out how that gets done, and whether it comes back to the board for review, or that's what I would propose we do at this point. All And I'm going to take Stephen's advisement under, or admonition to us under advice, and probably stop any further conversation since it wasn't agendized. Although I see a member of the public has asked to speak. So Michelle, if you could bring in Lynn Bramlett.
Lynn is on the line and free to speak now.
Thank you, directors. First, my understanding is that the contract with Menlo Park lapsed at the end of 2014, and the last reports were in early 2015. I'm Lynn Bramlett with MPC Ready, and I'm speaking as an individual, of course, but informed by that experience. In 2015, the Menlo Park City Council established the work plan goal to create a community disaster preparedness partnership with citizens, businesses, and schools, utilizing existing agreement with Fire District. The district's 2016 status update showed that it did not accomplish the task. However, we have the foundation for this goal today. We need the board's direct help and intervention to prevent needless collapse of a promising start. MPC Ready, a community-based organization launched to build neighborhood-based disaster preparedness. We modeled our efforts on national policies, research, and best practices. Government alone cannot accomplish the task of getting a community disaster prepared. Unfortunately, the OEM program employees have stated that they do not want to work at the neighborhood level. In addition, we see an almost exclusive focus on disaster response, despite national policy and standards that stress preparedness. The OEM program's lack of transparency, oversight, and accountability also creates conditions ripe for special interest to be elevated over the public's interests. The excellent book, Teamwork, What Must Go Right, What Can Go Wrong, states that teams without a clear unifying goal fail. So I asked the Fire Board, starting with the Strategic Planning Committee, to evolve Strategic Plan Goal number 1 into one aimed at preparedness for a specific disaster scenario and preparedness to response. I suggest the Hayward scenario of a 7.0 earthquake erupting at 4:18 p.m. on a workday. Preparing for that would get us prepared for almost all other disasters. That scenario has ample research, including the impact to our area, that would help us establish measurable targets, require community participation, the motivation to divide up the work, and the ability to measure and report on progress. Related to this, the OEM program has made broad and sweeping claims about responsibilities and capabilities that greatly overstate current reality. To me, these have created significant potential legal liability for the district. To start reducing legal risk, I suggest setting boundaries around the district's disaster response manager's role by making the incumbent the emergency manager for the fire district only. My time is almost up, so I will conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bramlett. All right, that brings us to next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. And I have a question for Stephen Miller. Number 7, relative to the resolution for continued remote meetings. If we adopt the consent calendar, do we approve that item, or does that have to be considered separately?
No, you can approve it as part of your approval of the consent calendar.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone want to take anything off the consent calendar?
Jim,
Yes, Robert.
I would like to for us to take that item number 7 off. I think we need to talk about that a little bit more.
All right.
And I'll move to approve the consent calendar for items 5 and 6.
Is there a second?
Second,
All right, Michelle, would you call the vote?
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right, item 7, Robert, do you want to get started on that?
Yeah, I know it's to approve the resolution to continue remote meeting. And I wasn't, are we saying that as long as the county it has a or the state, I assume the county, the state, the county has this restriction that we need to kind of conform to that, because and that is at a board meeting only, that pertain to any other meetings that the board pulled together, or is separate meetings with the board as collectively special meetings different than the separate from the actual board coming together as a whole?
I would ask Stephen Miller to address that.
Sure. So AB 361, which is the law, the recent Brown Act amendment that this resolution is presented to you in conjunction with, amends the Brown Act rules regarding teleconference meetings. It applies to any meeting of a legislative body of the district, which means the full board and any committee meeting at a regular meeting or a special meeting. And the Brown Act normal rules require the board members to participate from a location that is available to the public. And if they're meeting remotely, that location needs to be on the agenda. This resolution acknowledges the circumstances of COVID-19, which allows this board to meet as you are meeting tonight virtually without complying with those specific teleconference notice agenda requirements of the Brown Act. But it requires that in order to preserve that right, you must adopt the findings in this resolution every 30 days. So I hope that answers your question, Director Jones.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Is there any, Chuck?
I had a question for Stephen Miller also, please. If we were to move to a hybrid model where we met in person, but also broadcast our meetings over Zoom, would we still need to, could we do that under this same resolution?
I mean, the short answer is yes. If all is in the scenario you just described, all 5 board members are meeting in person, but you just want to allow the public to meet either in person or through Zoom, is that your question?
Well, I didn't mean to limit it that way, where, I mean, 4 members could meet in person and 1 could meet remotely or something.
Yes. So this resolution allows that to happen, and that 1 member who's meeting remotely would not be required to open that location to the public and identify it on the agenda. And so you can have hybrid meetings of any sort in any flexibility, so long as you adopt these findings indicating that the factors remain in place, which tonight they do.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing further, I believe we need a motion to approve the resolution to continue meeting remotely.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right. There's no further discussion. Michelle, please call the vote.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Corrali,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right, thank you. Moving on, item number 8, accept the fiscal year 2021 property tax revenue budget. Chief?
Good evening, directors. This is actually my staff reports. Can you hear me all right?
We
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay. Okay. So this next staff reports is the fiscal year 2022 property tax revenue budget reports, which provides the comparisons of the district's fiscal year 22 adopted property tax revenue budgets to the county of San Mateo's estimated assessed property tax revenues for the district. So just to give you a little background on the staff report. So in October of each year, The district is provided a letter from the county detailing the district's estimated assessed property tax revenues for the secure, unsecure, homeowners, property tax refunds, and the unitary tax. The letter is attached to the staff reports. So we use the letter to compare it to our adopted budgets for the fiscal year to see if we need to make any adjustments to the budgets. And in past years, the district's property tax revenues comes really close to the SMC estimates. So if you look at the chart on the bottom on page 73 of the staff of the package, this chart will provide the comparisons of the district's adopted budgets of 55.4 million in fiscal year 2 versus the estimated property tax revenues of 57.1 million. So there is a favorable difference of 1.7 million in property tax revenues in fiscal year 22s for the district. And if you go on to the next page, I provided a chart that would provide the property tax revenues data for fiscal year 21 actual, the fiscal year 22 adopted budgets, and the fiscal year 22 county estimated property tax revenues. So, so if the district in this fiscal year, we had a favorable net difference of 1.7 million or 3.1% increase in property tax revenues when comparing to the county's estimated property tax revenues. And there's also a 3.9 million or 6.8% increase when we're comparing between the county's estimated property tax fiscal year 22s over the district's actual for fiscal year 21. So all in all, it's good news for the district, and that concludes the reports.
All right, any questions?
I have a quick question, just
Robert?
to give a point of clarification. On page 73, which long,
Yes.
down at the bottom, I see the property tax secured and for 21 adopted budget, and then the actual the estimated budget, which is 61. Now the numbers, the amount, the property tax unsecured, homeowner property tax refund, and a unitary tax, though, where are those? Well, what category are those funds actually put in and used for? Are they just stuck in the budget as miscellaneous income? Is it geared towards any particular, besides looking at the overall budget, is it geared to?
So these property tax revenues are her lifeline for the districts.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the general fund operations.
Okay.
It's used for operations of day-to-day cash disbursements, payroll, and anything like that. So to answer your questions, it's in the general funds for use for day-to-day operations.
So the letter that came through indicated there was about 64 million that is being allocated to us?
They're estimated that we are gonna receive about 57.1 million this year relating to those categories that they provided.
So how do I read this letter then? Maybe I misunderstood. The letter that came from the county?
Right.
And it was saying they estimated, you have estimated that we have, I guess these amount, the 64 million is something that we estimated. Is that where I'm reading that correctly, or?
No. So the letter from SMC is actually from the County of Santa Clara, the County of San Mateo's. They provide an estimated of our property tax for us.
Right. Okay.
it is not from the district's estimated. Only the budget portion of that is based on our estimations.
Okay,
So our estimation is actually less than what SNC is estimating that we're gonna receive in the fiscal year.
so just hypothetically, what if we actually move it to that amount? I mean, we get that amount, right? And we have budgeted 57. So it's a hooray for us. We got this excess cash, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that if that happens, that miracle happens, where did that excess fund get allocated to?
Okay.
Or
So
does it just
any
thrown in?
excess, oh, sorry.
Go
So
ahead.
excess fund, if we don't appropriate it to operations in the fiscal year, it would just sit in the general funds until the end of the year. When we wrap up and close the fiscal year, we determine how much savings or how much savings that we have left.
Mhm.
We allocated to different reserve categories that that we did last month. The similar process to that process that last month.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Chuck?
I'd like to move that we accept the report.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? Michelle, would you call the vote?
Yes, I'm going to take a moment to ask for public comment. If anybody has any public comment, please raise your hand or hit *9 on your phone. And I do not see any. Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crowley. Director Crowley, you're on mute.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Solano
Aye.
and Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right, that brings us to item number 9, adopt volume 1 of the county multi-jurisdictional local hazard mitigation plan. Chief?
Chief, I can.
Thank you, Director. I'm going to have Ryan Zollicoffer take this on, and I will say that the person that was going to be coming from the county this evening, unfortunately, is not able to attend. So we do have Dan Belleville in their place for the county. Go ahead, Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you. I can go ahead and kind of get this set up. So back in March of 2021, the fire district submitted a letter of intent to participate in a multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan with the county of San Mateo. The local hazard mitigation plan identifies actions to reduce risk on fire district assets in accordance with disastrous events. In the past, the fire district has participated in partnership with local government as the entity having jurisdictional authority pre and post disasters. This year, we've decided to do a standalone annex so that if we wanted to seek disaster mitigation funds independently, that we could apply without working through the jurisdictions. I've asked Dan Bellevue, who the chief just mentioned, to be on this call. He's the director of emergency management, and he's joining us to give us a brief overview of the county mitigation planning process and how this all came about. And then Andreas will wrap up from the fire district's perspective on our hazard mitigation annex and the risk ratings and how we came to those predicaments. We're asking the board to adopt volume 1 and volume 2 of the hazard mitigation plan. So what I'll do is I'll ask Michelle if you can allow Andreas the permission to share his screen, and then
Andres, you're free to share your screen.
and then also, sorry, Michelle, if you're able to unmute Dan Bellevue, I believe he texted me that he's not able to talk.
I don't see him on the participants list. Is he under DTB?
Yes.
I believe that's right.
Okay, we'll find out.
Thanks.
Ryan, thank you for that introduction. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, Chief. Thank you for the introduction. And Ryan, Mr. President and members of the board, it's a pleasure to be with you this evening. I am Dan Belleville with the Department of Emergency Management, and it is a pleasure to speak with you, as I mentioned a moment ago, not only to be with you tonight to share the success of where we're going, hopefully with the LHMP approval, but having a soft spot in my heart for Menlo Park Fire, having served for Chief Chappellhauman when he was injured and out. So it's nice to be back with you again, and I know most of the group, so it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Ann Ludwig, as the chief mentioned, was in a traffic accident over the weekend, so she was in intensive care, but I'm real happy to report that she's going to be okay. And Ann and I have been working very, very closely for about 1.5 years on this, and I'll show a little timeline for you. But basically, I'm sharing with you the portion that the county is driving along with Ryan and Andres with the district. And feel free to stop me at any moment. Probably take me about 5 or 10 minutes just to share my part, and certainly open for questions, and I'll turn it over to them. So with that said, Andres, you have control of the PowerPoint as I understand, but right now I'm only seeing the agenda. Is that correct?
No, it should, Michelle, it should be up.
Andres,
Okay, hang on a second.
you should have a share.
There
There
we
you
go.
go. Thank you.
There it is. Okay, so what is a local mitigation plan? Well, many, many years ago, I can share with you, having spent a number of decades in this business, primarily in the fire service and now at the county, about 20 years ago, LHMPs, as they're often referred to, were very flimsy pamphlets that were put together mostly from Public Works, Fire, and maybe the Planning Department to address the hazards in a local community. And when that plan was submitted to the federal government, it might be 15, 20 pages in depth. It would make us eligible, or the local jurisdiction eligible, for funding. That part hasn't changed in the last 20 years. What has changed is how robust they are now and how important they are in terms of their success for generating FEMA support and Cal OES support in the event of a major emergency. But essentially, they assess the hazard vulnerabilities throughout the county, and they identify the mitigation actions. And as you can imagine, in this county, there are a lot of different interests in terms of the vulnerabilities. So for example, folks that are over on the coast side are very concerned about coastal erosion, whereas the folks in the central part of the county are more concerned perhaps with fire and how fire will speed through the jurisdictions like it did with the CZU fire last summer. The bottom line is that our goal is to reduce the level of injury and property damage and to try to avoid that community disruption. And as I mentioned, make us eligible for pre and post disaster community assistance, primarily from FEMA. And I should emphasize that what we've seen in the last 20 years or so, when I mentioned that the LHMPs were flimsy packets, where we've seen a significant redirection from FEMA in terms of funding these vulnerabilities up front rather than after the disaster. So they're putting the money up front. It's a smart way to do it. If you can mitigate an action before it occurs, it'll be cheaper in the long run. It'll save lives. It'll reduce injuries and reduce the disasters that have been occurring, which seem to be more frequent and more complex nationwide, as I think we would all agree to in recent years. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits of it? Well, obviously, I've talked a little bit about making ourselves eligible for grant funds, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we think this multi-jurisdictional, because there are so many jurisdictions involved, it's called an MJ LHMP, the multi-jurisdictional, that helps us and puts us in a position for that additional grant funding, again, which I'll talk about in a moment, and the reasons why. It also improves our understanding of the risks and vulnerabilities. The more we dive into this, we'll also see in a later slide that we've identified significantly more risks than what we identified the last time around. These LHMPs are put together every 5 years. They have to be submitted. And then each year there's an update to the 5-year plan. So after we seek approval with this current one that's in front of us, then we will have annual revisions to update the status of each local jurisdiction. And then we will repeat the cycle in 5 years in 2026. So it's a 5-year cycle with 1-year intervals with the updates in between. We hope to reduce the negative impacts caused by the natural disasters in order to save lives and reduce displacement and to reverse some of the things, for example, that we saw with the CZU fire last year. It encourages sustainable actions and it builds strong, resilient communities. And we've seen that in other parts of the country. We've seen it here in the Bay Area. And then finally, and I think it shouldn't be understated, is it fosters collaboration between local jurisdictions. And you'll see in the next slide that there's been significant collaboration this time around, and probably one of the cornerstones of what this county has to offer, that local jurisdictions work very, very well together. Next slide, Andres. So here are our planning partners for 2021. So for the first time ever, if you look at there's two boxes there. The one on the left are all the local governments, and the one on the right are the special districts where Menlo Fire Protection District lives this evening. On the left, for the first time ever, the county and all the local jurisdictions came together under one umbrella LHMP. So once again, we think that significantly positions ourselves in FEMA's eyes to be perhaps more eligible for support and funding going forward through this next 5-year cycle. On the right of the special districts, and you can see Menlo Fire is one of the many districts. We have a total of 36. Last time, I believe we had 29, and it'll probably grow again next time. But Tetra Tech, the organization that we hired to help assemble this and steer this project, actually stated that they felt that this was one of the best plans that they have ever seen and submitted to FEMA based on the number of jurisdictions and special districts that are involved. And they think this, once again, will significantly improve our chances for funding to mitigate the hazards that we've identified. Next slide. This is a calendar. I know when you look at these slides, sometimes they're kind of confusing, but basically it's two calendars. The top part of it is the milestones that we've taken thus far. The bottom part of the calendar is the outreach and engagement, which I'll talk about separately. So if we go to the top part, we have a calendar that starts from February up until the end of this calendar year. It was this February of 21. And that's where we identified the partners. That's where we did some outreach to see who was in and who was out. And there were times when we didn't think that we would get all the local jurisdictions, but we certainly did. And as I mentioned, we increased the number of total partners in this particular year's LHMP. The months through March and July, we provided our plan updates, including the equity approach, which is down below. And this was essentially a whole lot of people working together, many, many dozens, hundreds of people working together, identifying the hazards and going through different milestones through those months in order to create the draft plan that was submitted to OES and FEMA in August. So just a couple of months ago. This was on a very fast track. We had a lot of partners. It was really like trying to wrestle a bunch of slippery alligators, but everyone came together, and we really think it was a remarkable achievement. In September and October, Cal OES and FEMA reviewed our draft document, and they submitted a letter back to me that they would approve the document pending the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors adoption, which happened to be this morning. So happy to report that San Mateo County Board of Supervisors adopted the plan. So in the eyes of both FEMA and OES, it has been approved. And so now we are taking the remainder weeks of the year to get all the other jurisdictions to approve at their board meetings, and Menlo notwithstanding this evening. The bottom calendar is the outreach and engagement milestones. So this is a very important aspect of FEMA and things nationally, where there's a lot of outreach, primarily to those that are underserved or underprivileged. And as you can see, in February, we developed our outreach plan and identified who we would reach out to, including launching our new website. So if you happen to look at the San Mateo County website and would like to learn more about the LHMP, all of it's in there in its entirety, and folks are welcome to take a look at it. If you compare it to the one that we did in 2016, it's a remarkable difference how much improvement there's been with the collaboration of all the partners and the work that went into this project. Under outreach and engagement through the months of March and May, as you can see there, we did a media release so that we would let folks know we were working on this project. This is the community. We sent out our first survey and opened up our first public workshop. And then in the months of June and July, we did a second media release and did a second survey. And this was to glean the interest and understanding of our community members. And then, as you can see in August there, we also did another media release and provided for another workshop, a second workshop, and then released it to the public for comment. So let's take a look at the next slide. And I believe it identifies some of those folks that we did the outreach to. As you can see on the upper left there, the emphasis on equity and inclusion this go around, because some of the underserved communities are hardest hit. As I mentioned earlier, we had the CZU fire, and some of our poorest residents were impacted with their housing and their jobs and the crops and that sort of thing over there near the coast last year. So it's a good example of the kind of outreach that we try to achieve this time for those folks. Some of the sort of easy to read folks on the right there, that social vulnerabilities in the gray there, are who we were actually speaking with. Folks with limited English speaking abilities, people of color, some of the older adults, people that are undocumented, low literacy, you can read all of them there. People with disabilities, we had meetings with folks with disabilities and identified their needs. So we would meet with these folks, understand what their interests are, try to share what we were doing in their language, whatever it would take to reach out to that community. We did this time to an extraordinary level. Next slide, please. So the update successes that we have compared to the last go around is we have 36 partners this time, 20 cities and towns, plus the county unincorporated is 21, plus the 15 special districts, Menlo being one of them. We also, well, I just said it right there. We have all 20 cities and towns this time for the first time ever. Last time we had 18 of them. So we came close, but we didn't have a couple of them in the middle of the county. And this time we have 100% of the local governments. In 2021, we received over 2,000 survey responses, which I just spoke to a moment ago. And that's vastly improved over 2016 when we received 200 responses. Also in 2021, and I made mention of this a couple slides ago, is we had 700 mitigation actions that were identified compared to 2016 when we had 500. So there was significant improvement in this plan, and a lot more partners and a lot more people working together and a lot more outreach. So we feel very proud of what was done. Working with both Ryan and Andres was a pleasure. They were engaged with Ann throughout the process. They would ask questions. They made sure the district was addressed and the district's interests were addressed. And we're pleased to be partners with you. Next slide, please. So as the chief had mentioned when he opened up, we are recommending that you approve the multi-jurisdictional local hazard mitigation plan, which is volume 1 and volume 2. I had recent shoulder surgery myself, so I got a sling here and I can't use my left shoulder, but next to me I have a stack of books. They're probably a 1.5 foot high of these 2 documents. They're very impressive. As I mentioned, you can see them or view them on the county's website and peruse them. And it's not boring reading. It's very interesting reading. You can zero in on the areas, whether you want to learn about the plan and how it works, or if you want to go into a particular jurisdiction. But once again, we are seeking your approval with regard to this mitigation plan. With that slide, I believe I will turn it over to you, Andres. Is that correct?
You're muted, Andres. You're muted, Andres.
All right, how about now?
There we go.
Okay, I was just going to say that I'm ready to go, but I wanted to give the board if they had any questions for you directly.
I have a quick question. Dan?
Yes, Director, go ahead, please.
Welcome. Hey, just a quick question regarding the special districts that you reached out to. How did y'all do that outreach? Was it through LAFCO or, so there's some special districts that I think might have been interested in this, like the Granada Community Services District, because they have jurisdiction over parks and, little districts like that, but still, those districts that are concerned about emergency response and fires and things like that.
Yes, we did a number of ways. We reached out to different department heads that had connections with some of our community-based organizations. We sent letter to districts. There was word of mouth. There was communications through the county's information services department, the website. So we used a number of different methods to try to include everyone. Everyone was welcome. There were just a few districts that wanted to get on board that just couldn't quite do it. I think we have the Board of Education, but some of the school districts independently wanted in, but they weren't quite ready because they were in the middle of COVID. So we do think we'll get more next time, but it was kind of a potpourri of reaching out to get to those districts.
Well, congratulations on getting more this time than the last time. So great job. Thanks.
Thank you.
Chuck, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. I have two questions for Dan. Dan, do you consider that the plan itself increases safety, or is it the idea that getting a grant would improve safety?
Well, I think the first part that you mentioned, yes, it increases safety in terms, I think, of identifying the hazard. So in its most elementary form, the plan identifies where there's risk. And then it's up to the jurisdiction to determine how they're going to attack that risk, how they're going to deal with it. So if, for example, you have you have bridges in your district, it's like Foster City, let's just hypothetically, Foster City has a lot of bridges. So if they identify that their bridges are troublesome and they need to be shored up or replaced or earthquake retrofit or whatever, not that any of this is the case, then yes, it would make it safer because perhaps they might shut some of them down. They've addressed it as an issue. So they might triage the bridges that they have, for example, and shut some of them down until work or funding can be put in place to correct them. And then on the other hand, funding may come in, and more likely may come in, to address those bridges where FEMA might come in and say, look, based on the population and the hazard risk here, we're going to help fund and correct 2 of those bridges that you couldn't fund, something like that. So I think it does. It addresses the safety, and then it also helps fund it later on. But each jurisdiction identifies their particular concerns, and then each year we update the plan, and maybe some improvements have been made. Maybe funding came in, or maybe Public Works did something, or the district, the fire district in this case, did something to mitigate whatever that issue is.
Okay, thank you. My second question involves the timetable for approval. And I'm a little concerned because I just saw the document for the first time yesterday, and I only looked at the 43-page, I'm not sure if it's part 1 or part 2. If we were to approve this at a meeting in mid-December, would that be too late for your timetable?
No, sir. You Director Bernstein, you can approve it at any time. And really all each independent district needs to do is get it approved. And once it's approved, then we each of the districts begin to address their specific mitigation issues each year. So if you approved it in December or January and needed to work certain issues out, you certainly could approve it at a later date. You don't have to do it now. We think it's nice to have everyone buttoned up by the end of the year, but by no means does it have any bearing on the success of the mitigation plan. We've submitted to FEMA. They've recognized that if the board approves it, the district is part of the plan, but you don't have to do anything. You don't have to rush to anything tonight or until December, if that's what you so choose.
Okay, and I'm saying that not because I see a problem, but because I'd like to be responsible and read the document carefully. I've thumbed through it and so forth and gotten a feel for what's in it, but I really haven't read it at all. And I think it would be irresponsible of me to try to vote in 5 minutes or something on something that I just really haven't read at all.
I understand that. It is a beast, but actually the first few pages of the introduction say a lot. And I don't know if you've read that, and I'm not encouraging anybody to just look at a few pages, but it doesn't take long to get acclimated, but I certainly understand your concern.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Robert?
Yes. Was it my understanding that the way the process is working is that each jurisdiction in terms of cities, you got cities and then you got special districts, like our fire district, it runs across 3 cities and part of the county. Is it the anticipation for the fire district to work with the cities, come up with a plan of some sort to mitigate some of the issues that is noted in the plan with the cities, or how I couldn't figure out how that engagement or process would work, because I guess our jurisdiction had to come up with a plan of some sort. Is that the first step?
Yes, Director. So each jurisdiction, so in your case, in the case of the fire district, East Palo Alto, Atherton, and Menlo will come up with their own mitigation actions, as well as a district. So there's 4 there. There's the fire district and then the 3 jurisdictions that you serve. And certainly I would encourage, whenever possible, to collaborate and work together because you have common interests. For example, you have San Francisco Creek running through the jurisdiction. And I think it would behoove all parties to work together. And I think probably another example would be the folks that are on the bay side, the jurisdiction on the bay side may work closely together because of sea level rise.
Right.
And the folks on the coast side may work together because there's coast side erosion. So I think, yes, you're really looking out for your district tonight, and you want to approve the mitigation actions that your district has identified, but you also want to be in concert working with the county, unincorporated, and the jurisdiction that you serve. I think just as part of, good common will and a show to FEMA and OES that you're working together on these issues. Do you have to? Would you be hamstrung by not doing it? No. But I think it would behoove your overall effectiveness by working together with those that are nearest to you and share your common interests. Yes.
Thank you.
Jim?
Rob.
Good evening, Mr. Belleville. How are you?
Good evening, Director. How are you?
Fine. I just don't know how you do so many things so well. It just mind boggles me. But Dan, we have an issue with our ISO here where it involves maybe the water companies that support our district. And it looks like we're presently a level 2, and of course we want to get to a level 1. And one of our major obstacles is water volume and basically water infrastructure in parts of our district. So I see here in the areas that are identified, I see that, well, one, special districts and cities are involved in this. That's the first thing, which is good. And of course, a lot of them cross over, as you told Chuck before. So one affects the other. My question is, okay, involving budget and monetary resources. If, let's say, we have an incident, let's say water infrastructure, it could be deemed as a disaster analysis or task if we've got to provide certain water pressures or water to a particular disaster, like an earthquake that would result in fires. Are you following me what I'm saying?
Yep.
What I'm trying to bring up is I can see the fire district, the water district, and the county upgrading maybe the water infrastructure in a particular area in order to be successful with the hazard migration index. Do you follow what I'm saying? So
Yes.
my overall question is, would DHS, fund that type of a situation or that type of a problem that we have that's unique here with our fire district? Would
You
that
said
come
would-
in the area?
You said with DHS funded, did you mean FEMA or did you mean my department?
Excuse me,
Department?
well, DHS FEMA.
I'm sorry, you cut out on that last, I'm sorry.
Oh, DHS/FEMA.
Yeah, so I think, yes, so I think the short answer is yes. If the county and the local jurisdiction and the fire district came together, identified that that's a shortcoming and that a major fire could cause a significant loss of life, then that is one of many hundreds of the types of things that FEMA would look at to perhaps fund. And that's precisely what we're talking about. They identify, water infrastructure problems and erosion and all those examples I gave you. So yeah, this is exactly one of those things. Whether it reaches that level is another matter. I don't know.
Right.
They'd have to look at the complexity of it and see whether or not it rises to that level, because FEMA may identify many certain dozens of millions or hundreds of millions for just water infrastructure, because it may be something that they'll provide a grant for, and then we'll be eligible for that. We also think with some of the federal spending, with some of this infrastructure, that's another piece of it. So we were looking at FEMA funding not only as part of the local hazard mitigation plans being submitted nationwide, but now with the infrastructure bill, we think it might even be more robust. Don't want to overstate it, but I think those monies from those two sources certainly could address what you're mentioning there, Director Solano.
Yeah, and to go further, Dan, when we're looking at our fire district, okay, we not only serve the southern part of the county, but we also serve EPA, which are where Menlo Park and Atherton. So any type of enhancement or upgrading of one water segment of our fire district would benefit not only this overlap, which is what we talked about up here in your report, but it would affect the county, the communities we serve, those unincorporated areas, and then of course, state wildfire. And then it just goes on and on. So that overlap would be very important with this hazard migration index to try to, pull maybe that infrastructure inside that old water company to upgrade it the way they did. I think, where was it? Northern Pacifica or something? The county upgraded the water system there. I'm trying to think of when LAFCO went in and did something up there, but they upgraded this. Well, so I'm not really off base. I'm just trying to think out of the box, relative to try to help our southern part of our fire district and trying to, of course, raise our ISO to a level 1. So
I think that's, Rob, I think you have hit on a great idea that we should follow up on.
Well, I'd like to have it in this report if we could put it in there. What do you think, Robert? I mean, you do a lot of real estate stuff down there. Do you think it would be a workable thing?
Well, I was going to ask Dan, and I'm glad you brought it up, Rob, because it is an issue in our community, which has been and always will be, that the water pressure in East Palo Alto, it dips, it comes and goes, and there's a lot of where there's intersecting different pipes going different places. Have been found some old wooden boxes still out there, and the fire mains blow every now and then. So it piqued my interest when you brought it up, and then hearing what could be possibilities. And that was going to be my next question, was how then and this primarily for our board, how then would we go about approaching, and I guess it's for Ryan, in terms of trying to work with the city to try to pull together a joint project, a proposal to try to address address that particular issue, and if there will be value in pursuing that. And I'm only speaking of East Alto, certain parts of Menlo Park, I'm sure we're probably experience the same thing, as well as, and especially in the Bellhaven area too. So, because we do have some aging pipes in the ground.
You know, I think we're straying a little bit from our task here, you know, for approving this. I think this discussion about funding and how it might be used to improve the water system is, you know, bears serious discussion and follow-up. So I would ask perhaps at the next E-Prep committee that you put it on your agenda, Robert, see, you know, if this is a vehicle to get some of those things done.
I think that's a great idea, Jim. I mean, if the board wants to direct this to go back to the committee and we can bring this back to the full board in December at our December meeting, that'd be great. So we'll do what the board wishes.
Yeah, Jim?
Yeah, Rob, I think I saw, I'm sorry, were you finished, Rob? Did I cut you off?
So I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, Virginia, are you finished?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just trying to cut in to piggyback on Jim's suggestion.
No, I just wanted to make sure that, you know, going back to E-Prep is a good idea, but I definitely want that water infrastructure problem to be identified in this report that's going out here for our fire district. And I think it shows the overlap, you know, not only jurisdictionally, but it shows the overlap through the state and through FEMA. So is there a way we can put this in here, Ryan?
Well, Rob, you're referring to the OEM program study?
Yeah, this hazard migration index, to identify that as a problem area.
No,
Yeah, I mean, for volume 2 of the plan, Director, I don't want to go off here but on a tangent, but we can list any potential hazard mitigation projects in volume 2 of our annex. Volume 1, which was approved by the county, the big master volume, that's already been approved. I don't believe that, and Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we can make any modifications or edits to that volume 1 of the plan because that's been adopted. But according to our volume 2 of the hazard mitigation annex that Andreas is going to talk about, we can add that in if the district finds that as a potential risk and a hazard.
Right, that's what, Ryan, that's what I was talking about, Jim. And Virginia, you know, her committee's going to look at it as such, right?
Yeah, I mean, if that's
Great.
what the board wants, we can bring it back there.
Yeah, I
Great,
think
thank
there's
you.
consensus around that.
Yeah, and then bring it back to the December board meeting for, you know, action.
All right.
Great, thank you. That's
Chuck, I
great.
see you patiently waiting.
Well, I was just going to suggest, I think it should be on the Emergency Preparedness Committee agenda, but I think it wouldn't hurt to also put it on the Strategic Planning Committee agenda, because that committee might have some other perspectives that could be helpful to bring up at the board meeting in December.
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody would have any objection to looking at it in parallel with both committees, and that's it's just two more sets of eyes on the same issue from a different perspective.
Yeah, Chuck and I can look at it too, Jim, on our committee.
All right. You know, and Chuck, you brought up earlier the idea of you know, more time to review this before we vote. I think, Chief, did you send these reports out in August for review?
I did. August 19th, I sent it out to the directors.
You know, I know now it's time to vote, so I don't know if other directors would like more time, if you want to push the vote out on this till next month, until we've had time perhaps for both the committees to do their work and a little additional time to review these. If it's not going to interrupt or disrupt the process, if there's no objection, I would propose that we push it out to next month. Just again, allow everyone a little more time to review these documents.
Yeah, Jim,
Rob?
Yeah, just if we approve this now, can we add, if both our strategic planning and emergency prep come up with that, with this as another addition, can we add that as a section 2?
Yeah, Ryan or Andreas?
Happy to answer that. Absolutely. It's a living document. So
Okay,
as
all right.
Dan Belleville commented, it's an approved state and federal plan now. It's been adopted by the county. For our portion, which is volume 2 of the annex, that's pretty much, if you think about that as a project management matrix associated with our hazards, we can add projects as we feel fit. So it's already been adopted at the state, it's been adopted at the county. In regards to the specificalities of this district, there's nothing that ties us to changing it once it's approved after today or adding a project that we're discussing right now. There's no risk.
Okay, well then, Jim, I like to approve it. I like to hear from my other board members, but as long as we can add this to the second part, and it's a living document, I would like to approve it as it stands now.
Virginia?
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm kind of with Rob on this, but it sounds like there are the 2 parts. So we could approve the first part tonight, which I think is more general for all of the 36 agencies and the cities. And then there's the second part, which is what did y'all call it? The annex of volume 2, which is probably more geared towards us. That's how I read it. Is that a fair statement, Dan? Or Andres?
Fine, I can answer that. That's correct. Volume 1 is the broad underlying hazard mitigation plan for the whole county. That's taking into consideration all the hazards. And then the appendices, which is volume 2 of the jurisdiction hazards, pertain to our district or to whatever locality that's being addressed.
And they can be approved separately.
Yes, I was thinking that if we were to approve the first part, that I don't actually have a problem with that, and then we can have the 2 committees look at the second part, which is unique or could be unique to our district. I mean, what do y'all think of that idea?
Do you want to make the motion, Virginia?
Sure. I mean, but I'll make the motion to approve or to adopt volume 1 of the San Mateo County Multi-Jurisdictional Local Hazard Mitigation Plan 2021, and to move forward the district annex of volume 2 to the emergency response and strategic planning committees of the fire district.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion?
Well,
Chuck?
yeah, this is one of those sort of complex motions where I'm going to have to vote no on the first part, but I'd like to vote yes on the second part. And so I would appreciate it if we could uncouple the motion or make them 2 separate motions.
Yeah, Virginia, can you do that?
Sure.
Okay.
So let's take, we'll take the first one first, which is to adopt volume 1 of the San Mateo County Multi-Jurisdictional Local Hazard Mitigation Plan 2021.
All right.
I'll divide that question in other words.
All right, I'll second that.
I have a question.
Robert, did you have a comment?
Yes, I did. And I guess Dan or Ryan, did I hear you correctly say that these we got 2 motions, 2 areas, things we need to approve. It's approving one and not approving the other. What consequences or may result of just that? Is there any consequences? Is it I mean, if we come back later and say, well, we don't want to, I mean, how do they interplay? Because I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater or make it more complex if both of them are meant to be coming as a packet, because it seems to me, based on what Ryan was saying, that we can, it's a working document and we can always come back with projects. So we haven't put a project to the plan yet. We're talking about what we want to do, but we haven't really figured out what we're going to do. So, and that's what it seemed like this whole document is all about. It's just a plan of what we want to do, but we don't have a project to meet that plan. So the consequence is one, approving one without the other. And is it apropos to say that this is we haven't got a project yet for the plan? Now, everybody don't speak
I'll go
at
first
once.
if you don't mind. I've not seen one approved over the other. I've not seen one half I've not seen that yet. So I don't know. I don't think there's any problem with it. I might defer to council on that. I have not seen it, but really, I think the more important part of your question is it doesn't impact you. You do not have to feel obligated. If there's pressure from some of the group, then that's up to your vote tonight, but it harms you in no way. So I don't think really, personally, I don't think it'll harm you approving one half over the other. I haven't seen it, but I don't think it'll hurt you either way. So because there's no obligation, you're not going to miss anything if you don't. That's my take on it.
Right,
Ryan, you have any thoughts on that?
I would refer to Dan. I mean, the only concern I guess I would wonder whether or not we would have an approved compliant hazard mitigation plan for the district if we do not approve volume 2 of the annex, because the plan itself is volume 1, and without volume 2, the district, and like I say, it's all tied to pre-disaster mitigation grant funds. The only thing is that we can defer it, but our plan would not be compliant. So I've never seen it before throughout my years of experience of doing one annex versus not adopting the annex versus the plan. But I would just say that I don't think that the district would have an eligible compliant hazard mitigation plan if we don't approve both volumes. Dan, would I be right in that statement, or? Like I said, I don't think in the end it hurts you, but it does seem a little odd to do one without the other. Like it should be a package, because one works with the other. They match the middle. One speaks to the other. So I do think that might be a little bit of an issue, but I'll just say one last thing, and I don't want to take this conversation any too longer, is that I just want the board to know that volume 2 is a working document. It is like a project matrix associated with our risks and hazards, and that the real substance is volume 1, which has been approved by the state and the federal guidelines as having a hazard mitigation plan. Volume 2, which is the districts, is really just a project management matrix. It identifies the hazards within their organization and what are the mitigation strategies. We can add or omit to it as we feel fit. So I just want to let everybody know that. But I completely understand if there's hesitation that everybody wants to read all the volumes before coming to a decision.
Okay, well, so
Virginia?
it may just be easier to just do everything at once in December. And so I'll withdraw the motion and I think we should just put the whole thing into the original committee meeting or committees for EPREP and strategic planning and bring it back in December. I mean, if timing is not a problem, then I think the board would be more comfortable doing that. I was just trying to move things along.
Any further discussion, or?
So I'll withdraw my motion.
All right, do you want to make a new one then to refer these items to those two committees and then bring it back in December for consideration and vote?
The board had already, upon consensus, had forwarded these items to EPREP and Emergency Preparedness and Strategic Planning Committee, and to come back to the board in December.
Right.
So it's already approved.
Yeah, I don't think we need to make a motion for that, right, Michelle?
Correct.
Robert?
I just want to be clear. what do you want the E-Prep committee to do with this report? As well as strategic planning committee, what do you want us, what is the outcome of sending it to that?
Well, I think Rob Solano brought up the idea of using this as a vehicle to address water issues in various areas in the district, and for those two committees to consider that proposal. And, you know, is that a vehicle for us to at least attempt to gain grant funding to address that issue?
Are you talking about coming up with a plan or
Just address it. Is it feasible? Is it
Is it
reasonable? Is it doable?
is it doable? Okay.
That was my take, Rob. If it was your.
Yeah, it was, and you know, we can involve the particular, what do we have, Chief? 4 water districts within our fire district? Are there 4? I'm assuming
Yeah,
there's
5.
4. How many?
5.
Well, that'd be great to get them involved to find out exactly, you know, the areas in their infrastructure, do they need upgrading, and what's the potential cost, and go forward with that and try to identify what those costs are with those 5 in order to help us, you know, with the ISO rating and to make our community safer.
If there's nothing further, I think this has been directed back to the committees. It'll come back for consideration in December. So if there's nothing further, I think we'll move on. All right, Dan, I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening. Ryan, Andreas, thank you for all your work and for presenting here tonight.
Thank you all.
President, it's nice to be with you this evening, and the county's at your disposal if you'd so choose next month. It's up to you, but just we'll work through Ryan if that's the request. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Have a good night.
All right, that brings us to item 10, approve a resolution authorizing an increase to the firefighter suppression staffing level from 103 to 106. Chief.
Thanks, President McLaughlin, members of the board. So the recommendation is to take our current 103 FTEs and increase that to 106. Right now we have 5 openings where we have open FTEs, and we have 5 new hires in backgrounds for a March Academy. The reason I bring this to you tonight is if we were going to raise this to 106, we would want to do that at this meeting in order to meet the March Academy, which our training division will be heading up. And it would give us enough time to get someone through backgrounds and medicals, et cetera. We already have a list established, and we already have personnel on that list that have gone through chief's orals that are ready for that. Since 2017, we've increased daily suppression staffing by 6, which across 3 shifts is 18 positions. And that's with Truck 2 and Rescue 77. In response to that, we've always had 3 PTO positions available for our personnel to use to take time off, their accrued time off. And since the increased suppression staffing, we've increased that PTO to 4 positions. Now, historically, we've had 3 over per shift, which means that if we have 25 people per day that need to be in seats in engines and trucks and rescues, then we would have 3 extra per day to alleviate the backfill for PTO, sick leave, if someone's away on education reimbursement or some other type of leave or workman's comp. We've typically had 3 extra people to fill those spots. And it also gives us a little bit to where if people retire and we don't have an academy right away, then we'll run a little short until we have another academy and then hire more personnel. But since we've increased our staffing and then increased the PTO positions, that has put us into a bit of a situation where it's increased the overtime amount and more importantly, it's increased our force back, where the personnel that we have working overtime are being forced to come back for overtime just because of the nature of that work. There's only so much time people want to come back and work. And we actually have had our labor group, along with some chief officers, sit down to try to alleviate the force back problem, making some different moves internally so that we can balance that force back. And the union took good strides into helping us reduce those force backs. This was brought to the Human Resources Committee at the November 2nd meeting, and they recommended that be forwarded to the board for consideration. On page 2 of my staff report, it does show the cost to bring 3 new people on board. And those new firefighter paramedics obviously would start off at the lowest pay scale for the firefighter, the step 1. And then if you look at the OT costs for firefighters and engineers, as far as backfill, you can see that if we had all just firefighter EMTs doing backfill for the entire year, it would be less than bringing on new paramedics. However, if you have engineers, by which most of our personnel are, you can see that it actually is a bit more than hiring that step 1 firefighter. So in the end, as we hire these new personnel on, it actually will save you overtime dollars. And it'll actually save, I think, the work-life balance of many of our employees who are being forced back to work. This is one of those few jobs where if there's an open spot and someone wants to go home and we can't find someone to fill that spot, that person does not get to go home, and they're basically forced to stay. And they really don't have anything to say about that. And we don't like forcing people back, but in this job, we have to. And this will help alleviate that. So I think that the fiscal impact is warranted based on what we're paying now. And then the fiscal impact, I discussed this with Long Lam, and it would come from the general fund's payroll savings from various vacant positions due to promotion, retirement, or hiring lapse. And because this is only 4 months of the last portion of this fiscal year, it can be built into the next budget, and we can move some existing monies around to pay for this for the last 4 months of this fiscal year. I know everybody received the staff report, and I assume it was read. And if you had any questions, please feel free.
I have a naive question.
Yes, sir.
Is it my understanding by bringing on these 3 additional individuals, what it would do is that like another shift being kind of put into place that would allow this flexibility in staffing that in emergencies that may come up where someone is not available, then you have to go to overtime?
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I was just trying to put this in perspective of one of our interviewees that we had brought up a scenario, I don't know if you recall, where they created these full-time daytime positions that kind of help will mitigate, seem like some of the staffing issues that they had around people wanting to work 40 hours, not overtime.
This is different than that, in that they were adding additional personnel in that circumstance. This is, and I say additional personnel, but additional positions per day. This is not adding additional positions. We still have 7 engines that need 3 people on them. We still have 2 trucks that each need 4 people on them. And we still have a rescue that needs 2 people. So if you take the 7 engines times 3 is 21, and you take the 2 people on the rescue, brings up to 23, and you take the 8 people on the 2 trucks, that brings us up to 31 people. So we need 31 people in seats every day to run the fire district, to staff all of our apparatus. So in that, if you have 3 extra people per day, if 3 of those 31 are off and you have 3 extra, you don't call back overtime. They just come back and they do the backfill on each of the different shifts. And I'm just doing 1 shift. We have obviously 3 shifts. We'd have 93 positions over 3 shifts. This is excess people. It doesn't change the amount of people we have on an engine. It doesn't change how many engines we have on the streets. This is about the extra people that we normally have 3 extra per shift to fill those vacant positions, whether somebody's off on workman's comp or they're off on PTO, off on sick leave, off at a training seminar. We usually have 3 people, but since we've added more positions with the extra truck and the extra rescue, the amount of people that we have now in the fire district, there wasn't enough vacation spots to be able to take care of those people that we had. So we added 1 vacation spot. So we had 4 vacation spots instead of 3. Now, what I'm asking is, instead of having 3 extra people per shift, we have 4 that aligns with the amount of vacation spots. So if everybody's on vacation and we have 4 extra per shift, those people would be backfilling on those shifts and it wouldn't cause any overtime. We've been running, and I put it in my staff report, average of
What's that, 7.9, something like that?
yes, I'm trying to find where it was, but it is about 7.9 per day. And then the backfill, yeah. So we have plenty of people off duty to facilitate having 4 extra per shift. And in the end, it is a cost savings due to the fact that the entry-level firefighter at step 1 has a lower pay scale than most of the engineers that would be backfilling if you didn't have that extra person. So basically, if you have 7 overtimes every day, if we hire these 3 people, you will only have 6 overtimes every day in kind of the global sense. So that offset of that 1 overtime every day is offset by hiring 1 more person. Now, there is always a chance where less people are off than we have, and we end up having 1 extra person on shift, but that hasn't happened in a very long time. We seem to have people off for different reasons, whether it's people off for training, many training spots, and it just spreads our people really thin to try to backfill all these spots. So having 1 extra person per shift would take some of that pressure off of our personnel having to come in and backfill on their days off. And more importantly, we force them to come back where they're not necessarily wanting to work that day. We make them.
Thanks, Chief.
Chief, does the labor contract allow you to assign those extra people where they're needed?
If we have extra people and they don't need to backfill anybody,
Yes.
it is built in as to where they're going to go, what rigs they're assigned to.
Okay, there's no conflict with the labor agreement.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Virginia?
Jim? Yes, so to follow up on that question that Jim just asked, Mike, so has this been discussed in the Joint Committee for Labor and Management?
It has.
Okay, so it sounds like this is an agreement that, everyone can live with.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chuck?
Excuse me, I have a question for Stephen Miller. Stephen, would you take a look at page 2 of 3 of this report for a moment?
I'm with you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm looking at the second full paragraph that starts the flex time required. Are you with me?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. It refers to code sections with requirements about vacant FTEs and so forth. Is this your legal opinion that's here, or where is this legal opinion from?
It's not my legal opinion, no. I'm not suggesting that it's wrong, but you're asking me whether I participated in drafting this. The answer is no.
Director Bernstein,
Yes.
In the past, I don't know at what point, but quite a ways back, you could send 10 people to backgrounds and only have 2 positions available, and then decide who out of that 10 you wanted to give the 2 positions to. Francine would probably be able to help me on this, but now the current law is that if you have 2 available positions, you have to give a conditional offer of employment to anybody that you're going to send to backgrounds. So I could not send more people to backgrounds than I have current FTEs for. So the purpose of this paragraph is to say that in order for me to send these extra 3 people to the academy, I have to have the additional FTEs in which to do that, and that requires board approval. So I can't send anybody to an academy that the board hasn't approved that we have an FTE for that position, which is why I'm here before you tonight.
Well, let me say, and not for the reasons somebody might think, but first of all, this is a very complex analysis here. I think it's very interesting. I think that I would like to see this go to the finance committee. I had trouble reading it. It's very dense. It's suggesting to me, if anything, and let me say, I am supportive of providing extra positions. I was part of the group that supported the 9 additional positions to give 3 additional shifts. So it's not, the concept is of interest to me. But
thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm supportive of it, but I think we might be even overly conservative here. I think perhaps we should be talking about even more than this. I mean, your argument is that, let me finish here, that your argument is that over a reduction in overtime would pay for these positions. And I think on the surface, that's certainly possible. But if that's the way to solve overtime, and we had a huge overage this year, or increase in overtime, I think perhaps we ought to be talking about something more aggressive than 1 additional person per shift. So,
so I appreciate that. However, our golden number is 8 for an academy because of how we spread them across the shifts, because they do come in as non-drivers, and there is a huge amount of work to get these people not only through an academy, but also through probation. And this would bring us up to 4 extra per shift. And I think after you bring up these 4 and you run with them on shift, and I'm thinking that COVID, the backfills for COVID is going to be gone next year when these people get out of the academy. I believe that at that time, you do another analysis to decide whether during the next academy you want to increase FTEs. But I would not recommend increasing more than 3 FTEs at this current time for those 2 reasons. Number one is we did this analysis based on adding 1 FTE per shift, and we think that would be enough to fulfill our problems with the force back of overtimes. But there could be a time where there's not anybody on workman's comp, and maybe people aren't off, and then you end up with a lot of extra people during the day because there's nobody they need to backfill. So I think you need to take baby steps with this as far as how many you hire. But in addition to that, the 8 on probation we've done many more on probation, and the ripple effect is very negative throughout the organization. So I'm not going to disagree with you, but moving forward, I wouldn't do any more at this point.
There was one more component to this, and it was done long ago, and not, in my opinion, not conclusively, but it related to the analysis of having someone be paid overtime versus bringing on a new person with extra retirement and all that. And there was kind of a balance. of where the sweet spot was, where it made sense to balance financially those two things.
I think we're achieving the balance with this based on our numbers and based on the daily staffing. Because if you go over 4 per shift and you go to 5 per shift, there may be some days where you don't need 5 per shift. Then you have an extra person on a fire engine and you're paying for an extra person that day that you may not necessarily need to fill the rigs. So what I'm saying is I would take baby steps and do one per shift and then do another analysis next year and see where that's taking you and see where the overtime has gone. And then you can make that adjustment if need be. I don't think you're going to need to adjust it beyond this. I could be wrong, but we won't know for a year.
I have two more questions then related to this. I didn't quite understand your comment about 8 people in the academy. Is that the number we would have if you added these 3? You've had
Correct.
5 plus 3?
Right now we have 5, and adding the 3 more would bring us to 8. Now there's others in the academy because typically a few different cities all put their people in the same academy, and all those training divisions run it together. However, for us, when we have 8, right now we have, that would be 3 per shift and then 2 on another shift. It's a lot to train new firefighters, and there's a really high amount of hours that are placed on probationary training and testing through our training division, and then also through all the company officers. And it's a big weight for the department to go ahead and do all of their regular training that's required annually, and then to add in probationary training. So we do try to put that in and kind of regulate it so that we don't create a bottleneck within the fire district. And then it makes it difficult for us to get other things done that are required. So we try to keep that.
I think that's a strong point. It wasn't in your staff report, so I just. But let me just ask you a question then. Sort of my last question on this.
Sure.
It's always bothered me, and I thought we had kind of done away with it, and this seems to bring it back a little bit, where we get something coming up to us with no preparation time, just suddenly there it is, and we're on a deadline and we have to do it tonight, or we can't get them in the academy and so forth. And I always feel a little manipulated about this. So let me just ask you a question. Is it possible that we could refer this to the Finance Committee in December, vote on it at our December meeting, and still be in time for the March Academy?
Well, first of all, I will apologize. I'll put this 100% on my shoulders. I'm not trying to manipulate anything. Obviously, since I've been in this position, there's been a lot going on, far more than meets the eye when I took it. When I started talking to labor, because we were doing so many force backs, we made some changes within the department policies to try to address the force backs. We found that they were working to an extent, but they were working, and it was us, the administration and labor, working together to try to solve the problem. But before I came to you asking for more FTEs, I really wanted to see how we did addressing the problem before I asked for more personnel. And since we've done those changes and made those changes to try to address the force backs, and then at the same time, we're counting backwards from the academy, because we had already had 5 people in backgrounds for probably over a month now. But as I'm discussing with labor, and I'm discussing with operations, and I'm discussing with HR, we all kind of came to the conclusion that, yeah, it looks like we really do need 3 more. Then it creates a time for an analysis to make sure that all this information in the staff report is compiled, that it does make sense to get 3 more. And then it comes to you as a board. So I do apologize, but I just didn't want to bring anything prematurely before I had all the information gathered. If I wait till December, That's going to put a lot of pressure on the backgrounds because in December, then you're going to pretty much lose that entire week of Christmas and New Year's. And then we're into January and the academy is supposed to start in March. And I've learned over many, many years that it takes a long time to get someone through all the backgrounds and the medicals and all the other things that HR does with our new employees. And that doesn't include if someone doesn't get through the background that we have to try and get another person through in their place. So it's not my intent to rush you, but it is my intent to give you the facts. And the facts are that if we wait till December, probably won't make that March Academy.
You know, and Chief, I appreciate all those comments, and I want you to throw yourself on the sword because you did bring this to the HR committee. And I have to tell you, Chuck, I found it compelling because of the large increase that we saw in overtime in the last fiscal year, the compulsory forced overtime. And I thought those were compelling enough to put them on the agenda for tonight. So I know the typical path would be the finance committee, and if it'll be the will of the board here. I thought it was compelling enough, and the hiring issue to get them through backgrounds and hired so you could have a class of 8. I found that compelling to bring that forward tonight. And again, will of the board, if you want it to go back to the finance, we can do that. Or you know, if the other members feel as I do, you know, we could act on it tonight.
Yeah, Jim.
Rob.
Yeah, you know, I heard the argument from the chief, and you know, you have a training background with recruitment with the Highway Patrol, and so do I with DEA. And you know, you've got to get so far ahead of the curve sometimes, and because of the restrictions and everything. And you know, I don't have that operational background that Chief Schaefer is dealing with. And you know, I want to make that easy for him, and you know, support his decision, not only, you know, just to bring the 3 than to bring the 6, because he's trying to be very conservative. And if you remember the discussion that we had in HR, I asked him if he wanted any more positions, and he was very conservative about it. So, you know, I just like to make a motion to go along with this, have him fill this class, and then, you know, we can always go back and when there's another academy, and since he has some other people and backgrounds. So I like to make a motion, and if I can read it here, approve a resolution authorizing an increase to the firefighter suppression staffing level from 103 to 106 full-time equivalent FTE positions.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, and Robert, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to support. I was going to make the motion to approve it, but Rob kind of got it going on, so I support what he said. And I think it's one of those things where that was mentioned that next year it's a good project for the finance committee to maybe take on to begin to look to see if there's any other expansion that's necessary to achieve greater cost savings, you know, for the in overtime. So I support where we are right now in terms of moving forward with allowing this to happen tonight.
Chuck.
Yeah, I think having listened to the arguments and so forth, I think I'm going to vote for the motion, but reluctantly, because of I just don't think we've gone through the right process here. But I'd like to ask that this actually be on the next finance committee meeting, just to understand while it's fresh in the minds and we've got all these numbers and everything, I'd like to be able to ask more questions about it, to understand how the analysis was done and so forth. So I would like to have this on the finance committee agenda, and I will support it.
All right, very good. If there's any further, if there's no further, I'll ask Michelle to call.
Yeah. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Chuck.
Michelle?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Director
Sure,
Solomon,
sure.
did you have another comment? I see your hands raised.
It's not raised now, but I was just thanking Chuck for going forward and bringing it back to the Finance Committee again.
Is there any public comment on this, Michelle?
If there is any public comments, please raise your hand, or you can hit *9 if you can. And I see none. I'll do the roll call vote. Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Corrali,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye.
Thank you, directors. I appreciate it.
All right, very good. All right. Number 11, approve a benefit option for the successor compensation plans for chief officers and management and confidential unrepresented personnel. Chief?
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Francine from HR.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Board of Directors. So I'm going to bring this report to you for review. This is a follow-up to the staff report that was presented in the October meeting, where we had asked for board approval to make approve an option for the chief officers and unrep compensation plans, because we were in the open enrollment period. And in that report, I had an option for employees who waive, and I had asked that it be redacted from the approval because we were waiting for approval from legal that we could actually offer a contribution to the cafeteria plan for employees who waive. So we did get the opinion from our legal benefit expert that said that we can. And so now I'm bringing this report forward to see if we can offer an amount of flex credit monies to employees who waive health because they have other health, but to allow them to use the monies towards other eligible benefits under the flexible benefit plan, which would be something like flex spending health, dependent care, voluntary life. And so what I'm asking for is if employees that do waive, because they get no benefit whatsoever, if we could offer them $700 a month towards the use for any of the eligible benefits. If we only have currently 2 employees in this group, and for these 2 employees, if they were to utilize the full benefit, I have the cost for a plan year being $8,400 per employee. And the amount was basically, I just took, if someone could utilize the full dependent care amount that's eligible under the plan, the full health care amount that would be eligible under the plan, and the employee voluntary life, the full amount, as well as the highest age bracket because it's age rated. And that's how I came to the $700. So obviously maybe the 2 employees won't be able to utilize all these funds, but I think it would be to offer the 2 employees that waive a benefit. Since we do offer this benefit to other employees, we let them use their leftover monies to purchase eligible benefits through the cafeteria plan. Do you have any questions?
Chuck?
Yeah, I'm not clear here, Francine. Is this only for people who waive, or is it for like single employees who buy a lesser plan?
The single employees that buy a lesser plan already have this benefit. We just didn't include it for the waives because we weren't sure we could. We weren't sure it was eligible for them to use money to purchase other benefits if they waive health, just because the rules are very complicated. But single, 2-party, family like myself, if I have any leftover cafe monies because maybe I choose a lesser plan, all those groups can use leftover monies towards any eligible benefit. But this group doesn't get anything and doesn't get to use any extra money because they don't get any money at all. So that's why I'm asking if the board would approve that we offer these employees some benefit that they can use towards a flex spending health or dependent care or voluntary employee life insurance plan.
So could you just describe, I'm sorry, because I have leftover memories from when we've discussed these issues before.
Yes.
Are there any groups that are left out in this, or is everybody, I mean, are we back to where we were 3 years ago or whatever in terms of people can use these unused medical benefits?
So there's still restrictions on what people waive can use. Just like when we made the other amendment, it doesn't reinstate everything that people had because we did away with the cash, but it does provide basically the same benefit at a lower level than that all the other groups get at each level. So for employee +1, for employee only, for family, they get certain tiered benefits. And if they don't use all those benefits for a health premium, they can use the extras towards one of the eligible plans under the Section 125. This group, for the 2 employees or any, for future years, it could be more people that waive, don't get to use any of the monies. We didn't allocate any, and last year or for all this year, when the district took away the benefit, they didn't allocate any money for this group at all. So they had the whole entire benefit taken away from them, and nothing was reinstated. So this is to try to give this group of employees some benefit so that hopefully they can use it for an eligible benefit under the plan.
And could this then be used in the future where, let's just say we took the highest number, I don't even remember what it is anymore, $2,600 or whatever per month for family?
Yes.
Could we just allocate $2,600 for every single employee, and they then could reallocate it to whatever benefit they wanted? In other words, could we treat everybody equally without regard to their family status?
So we can do that. The employee, well, this group of employees for sure won't be able to use all those monies if they waive health insurance. They probably the most that they would be able to use would be approximately the $700 a month, because there's limits on how much you can contribute to each of the plans, and there's limits on what plans are qualifying. So the $2,600 for everyone won't benefit this group anymore. It could possibly benefit a different group if they had a higher premium than what we allotted at the tiers. But for this group, it won't give any greater benefit at this time because of the limits.
Robert?
Yeah, Francine, could you help me out here? So is there, if I'm looking at this, under the discussion section, did you say there are 3 categories that the individual could use this money for? I think I heard you say the health flexible spending arrangement, the dependent care flexible spending, and the volunteer life insurance.
Yeah, so those are the only plans that the district offers that are eligible for under the Section 125. And then each of those plans has its own limit. So dependent care, the limit is $5,000 per year if you qualify and you have an eligible dependent care expense. For the flex spending health, even though the actual limit is higher, the Affordable Care Act limits the amount that employers can contribute to the plan. So currently the limit is $2,750 a year. However, the Affordable Care Act says if you're purchasing or enrolling in the plan with flex credits, you only can enroll up to $500 a year. So they have limits, and the voluntary life also has limits in that under the Section 125 plan, you cannot use it for voluntary life for your spouse or voluntary life for your children. It's only voluntary life for the employee. And then the employee would have to basically, pass the medical to ensure that they were, guaranteed the amount that they would like to enroll in. So there are limits regarding what you can use the funds for in order to maintain the taxable, status or tax-free status of the plan. And if you don't comply, then you actually can't offer the plan because you're not in compliance with the rules. So for this group, it wouldn't provide a greater benefit to give them more money. That's why for this group, which I'm presenting before the board today, is just to ask if we can give the people that waive a benefit, because when they had their benefit taken away, they weren't given anything else.
What is the voluntary life insurance? What's that limit on?
So through our carrier, they can do up to $300,000 of coverage, but they have to basically complete an evidence of insurability. It's called an EOI, to make sure that they are approved in underwriting. So they may not be approved for that amount. The guarantee issue amount is $100,000, and employees can adjust or increase by 2 increments every plan open enrollment year, and an increment is $10,000. So, and it's age rated. So the older you are, then the monthly premium could be higher because it's based on age brackets.
And so would they get the $700 or I guess that we're talking about here a month?
So they it's not paid out in cash. It's just made available to use towards eligible benefits. So if we say, say I waive, I don't, but say I do, and then the board approves this, then I could say, okay, well, if I have dependent care, because maybe I have children or something like that, I could use the funds towards that. Or if I needed to enroll in the FSA health, I could use up to $500 a year towards that. Or if I wanted to do a voluntary life insurance policy. So chances are probably the 2 employees may not be able to utilize the whole benefit, but just out of the plans we offer, I try to make it match what it would cost if they could utilize the whole benefit for the 2 that waive.
So if I understand you correctly, then do we have a limit on what the employee, or is this suggesting a limit that we place on the employee for any one of these categories? Could you?
Yeah, so this amount is based on the limits that we have. And the limit is the $5,000 a year for the dependent care, the $500 a year for the health care. And then I just looked at the highest tier for life insurance at the highest age bracket and what that monthly premium was. And I annualized that. And then I took all those numbers and divided it by 12. And it was approximately the $700. So that would be kind of, if someone could utilize the most of the benefit, that would probably be the cap. But if we gave someone that waived $2,000 and they waived, they would not be able to spend it all, because this $700 represents basically all the benefits that we currently offer at the cap that can be provided through the plan. Yes, Director Bernstein?
I wanted to ask, would we be able to expand, and I don't mean tonight, but just in theory, expand the eligible benefits, for example, to include long-term health care?
Yeah, so I am looking into that. I looked into HSAs and health savings accounts because that's an eligible benefit. Long-term care with certain provisions is an eligible benefit. Vision, which the district doesn't offer, is an eligible benefit. So I'm starting with the vision, and I've kind of started to research plans, and I guess my plan is to try to implement a vision plan for district employees by the first quarter of next year. Because if we do offer a plan mid-year, we can amend our cafeteria plan and employees can use the funds towards that. Vision is very inexpensive. So again, it wouldn't, even if someone had a family, usually family vision is maybe $25 a month, but it will give employees another option to use these funds. And then after I kind of go through that process, then I'd also like to look into the long-term care for health savings accounts. It's actually not an option for the district because in order to provide a health savings account, you need to have also a high deductible health plan. And because we contract with CalPERS Health, all of our health plans are basically pretty rich plans, and CalPERS doesn't offer a high deductible health plan. So we can't do a health savings account. But I am looking into what other benefits we can provide so that employees can utilize more of their cafeteria funds.
I'm aware of some other ones. They're not very expensive, but for example, acupuncture and chiropractic are also, I believe, eligible.
So they are eligible, but you have to usually have a median to use those, and that's through a health savings account or an FSA health. I don't know that you can just provide it. I believe you have to provide it through a plan. That's how
We provide it through our Section 125 plan, basically.
Directly, not under an FSA health or an HSA.
That's correct.
Okay. So then, yeah, I guess there's other options that we can look into for sure.
Okay, thank you. My goal, by the way, would be, I would love, I think some of the board members don't agree with me, but I would love to see each of our employees being treated equally in terms of the benefits they receive without regard to how many children they have or, you know, their marital status and so forth.
And any further discussion on this?
I'm ready to make a motion
Please go ahead.
I want to make a motion.
Please.
There's no more comments. I make a motion that we approve a benefit option for the successor compensation plan for chief officers and management and confidential unrepresented personnel that has been stated in the staff report.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? Any public comment, Michelle?
If there's any public comment, please utilize the raise hand feature, or if you called in, you can hit *9. And I do not see any. Would you like me to do roll call?
Yes, please.
Dr. Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director McLaughlin?
Aye.
Jim, if I may, I will also like to maybe encourage Francine to continue to work and look to try to see what else is out there for the employees that may fit into the eligibility criteria.
Sure.
Thank you, Director Jones.
All right, item 12, discuss a mandatory vaccination requirement for all district personnel. Chuck, I know you prepared a staff report, if you will, on this issue. Would you like to represent it?
Sure. I didn't mean to hide it as a staff report, but I was trying to use the same format and so forth. I think it's no secret that I feel very strongly that we need to ensure that our what I consider healthcare providers who interact with the public are have the, you know, safest environment around, you know, surrounding them. And I think vaccination is one of those tools. I really don't know how the rest of the board feels about this, but I think it is important that we do this. And I think it's important that we do it even if the county has not spoken about it. It's coming. We're seeing it in in cities, in other jurisdictions. And the federal government has mandated, although it's been put on hold, that organizations with over 100 people, and I believe these are private organizations. I'm not trying to suggest government organizations, but with over 100 employees would be mandated, would need to mandate vaccination and so forth. And what I'm proposing here is really two things. One, that we prepare an ordinance to be discussed that would talk about how we would implement such a mandate, including alternatives, if any, to vaccination. And the second part that troubles me greatly is that the district is incurring costs for unvaccinated employees that are not required for vaccinated employees. Basically, when somebody is exposed to COVID anywhere, could be on the job or at home or elsewhere, they need to quarantine, but that is not, and that's 10 days. That's very costly expense. And up to now, the district has been paying that. And it doesn't seem reasonable to me that taxpayers should be asked to pay for someone's freedom of choice to not do that. Vaccinated employees do not need to quarantine. If in fact the resolution were prepared by legal counsel that offered an alternative of testing or something like that, I would also propose that the cost of the testing be borne by the individuals involved and not our taxpayers. So that's the essence of what's proposed here.
Any questions for Chuck or discussion on this?
If somebody supported it tonight, all they'd be supporting is the preparation of an ordinance, not the mandate itself at this point.
Robert?
There's a couple clarification points that I need to, from the staff, from report from Chuck. On page 2 of 3, there, I don't know if this is just a commentary on your part, but the paragraphs down right before it starts with the major highlighted point to where it's a proposal and discussion, the paragraph before that, it said, it make it a statement that it is likely that the majority of the district employees will support and approve of required vaccination to protect themselves and their family. The question is, what survey have you done to try to come to that conclusion that to boldly to make the statement that the majority of the district employees will support? That's the first thing. And the second thing, right before, down below that, in terms of proposal and discussion, that first paragraph, you mentioned that the prospective resolution would require a full COVID vaccination for all district staff members, except those employees from whom vaccination violates a bona fide teaching and practice of their religion, et cetera, et cetera. So how, I mean, who's going to clarify what's bona fide in terms of teaching? We got the traditional teaching, and we got some non-traditional teaching too. So how do you make the distinction who's in, who's out in making that, people being exempt from that? So you said also in the last paragraph, the resolution would also eliminate payment to unvaccinated employees for time spent in testing, quarantine, and et cetera. If someone comes up with COVID or employees, are you saying that of the district, are you saying that they for those days that they're sick and quarantined, they don't get paid? I mean, are you saying that they have to take sick leave? I'm not sure what all that means. it kind of worries me that unless we have, and that's why I was, I thought there might have been another staff report looking into this in terms of kind of letting us know what the protocols are now, and to try to look at what we can do to try to strengthen those, if anything. But since we don't have that to make a judgment about the report, I mean, those are just some of the areas that I highlighted that there's some other questionable areas, but I just leave that alone. I just don't understand. I just need an answer for those questions.
Jim, may I answer the question?
Yeah, please, Trent.
Please.
Okay, Robert points to the paragraph right above where it says proposal and discussion, and asked what the source was for saying that the majority will support and approve of that. This is not a scientific poll, Robert, but I really point to
I gathered that.
Yeah, I point to two things. One is that 80% of the district employees are vaccinated, which would suggest to me that the majority approve of vaccination. And I assume they do it maybe for the good of society, but I would also assume they do it for the health of their families and so forth. And here they're living in a communal setting with other firefighters. I would doubt that they would want to bring home, or that their spouses and family members would want them to bring home COVID-19. So that's how I made that statement. The second point is that we haven't received, even though we've been discussing this, or I've been discussing it since August, we have not received a single complaint or issue from any employee about the prospect of doing this. And I would have thought that if there was somebody that felt strongly about it, that they would have objected. There was, one citizen who argued against it, but no employee. So that's the basis. Whether that's strong or not, I'll leave that for you to decide.
Well, how did you come up with the last statement you just made? You mentioned about it's been out for the last couple of months and no one has came up for objection.
Yeah.
What's been out there in staff circulating that I mean, I don't know about it. Maybe you done talked about it before, but this is the first time I'm hearing about.
We've discussed it at the meetings here. It was put on the human resources agenda and discussed there.
Okay.
And nobody showed up or spoke against it. And let me just, that doesn't surprise me in a way. I mean, my guess is that people, the fire service is a strong brotherhood, and people want to support each other. And I think this is potentially a divisive issue. So I could see why my feeling is somebody might be glad that somebody like me was bringing it up because they just didn't feel comfortable doing it, but I don't know that for certain. In terms of the one in that right under proposal and discussion, when you asked who would decide about a bona fide teaching, I think that is something that is knowable. I think there are religions that, for example, Christian Scientists who do not believe in medical interventions, and that's part of their teachings. And you could point to that. I think I think there are very few, in fact, documents that I've read have suggested that other than those few religious groups, nobody would find in their teachings or in the Bible or a sanction against COVID vaccination, but would still get smallpox vaccination. In other words, the Bible never differentiated between different kinds of vaccinations, but people who believe that the Bible supports, their deity as a savior, that's a legitimate thing, and they have a history showing that they do not regularly use doctors and so forth. So to me, that's something where someone can make a bona fide objection.
Okay, if you're done replying to Robert's
I have one more, Jim.
inquiries. Okay,
There was one more,
It's-
the next paragraph. And just to be clear, it said this would eliminate payments to unvaccinated employees for time spent in testing, quarantine, and isolating. I just wanted to be clear that the vocabulary here, if you have COVID, you have to isolate. The word quarantine is not used. Quarantine is only used for exposure. Isolate is what you do when you have it. I would suggest that people who were not vaccinated were basically could use their paid time off to take care of their illness as they would any other illness. And that COVID, just if they shouldn't be using taxpayer funds to fund COVID illness, in my opinion. So Jim, I'm sorry, that's.
no, that's right. I know, Virginia had a comment.
This is actually probably a question that's more appropriate to the chief. Mike, has this issue been discussed in the joint committee between labor and management? It may not have been discussed, or someone may not have brought it up from staff to the HR committee, but I'm just wondering what kind of discussions there have been between management and personnel, labor in particular.
And are you speaking of the vaccination requirement? Or are you
Yes.
speaking of the cost of having people off duty?
No, we're on item 12, which is
Yeah.
the vaccination
just-
mandate.
I was just referring to what Director Bernstein was just discussing about the cost of having people off on COVID leave. I wasn't sure if you were
Oh,
referring. to
no,
that or
I'm
not.
talking about just the principle of, a vaccination requirement. I'd like to know if there's been a meeting between labor and management in that joint committee, and if there has been, what you might be able to tell us, if anything.
Sure. So the last time I spoke to labor about vaccination requirement, they were not prepared to back it. But I have not spoken to them in a bit of time, so I would have to probably circle back to see if they were able to embrace that now. The last time I spoke to them, they weren't able to embrace it at that time. But honestly, I have not asked them to be prepared for this meeting with that answer.
Okay, I'm sorry. So they were not able to embrace it at the time. I couldn't hear you very well. Is that
Correct.
correct?
They were not able to embrace it at the time that I asked them, but I have not asked them recently, nor have they reached out to me to tell me they had changed their mind.
Right. So
And I did.
when was the last time you spoke with them again? I'm sorry.
It's been probably a few months.
Okay, thank you.
We've discussed many other things related to COVID and done a lot of back and forth with that. But as far as them with the mandated vaccination, we have not brought that subject up in a few months.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chief, has the county health officer, since we last met a month ago, offered any guidance in this area? Specifically, vaccinations or workplace safety measures?
Not that I'm aware of. There hasn't been any changes. I know Melanie is on the call and Francine is on the call. Between the two of us and operations, we do discuss these items. And if there were any changes, Francine was going to reach out to me to let me know there were changes. So I wouldn't be asking her every week, but she has not reached out. Michelle, are you able to unmute Melanie?
I believe Melanie's already unmuted.
Yes, yeah, I am muted. I just wasn't sure you wanted me.
Oh, there you are, Melanie. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi there.
To answer the question, the public health officer has not made any new changes or stances on mandating vaccination at this time. So nothing from the county public health
Jim?
office.
So can I
Yeah.
ask a quick question, Jim? Oh, sorry, I don't,
Yeah, Rob?
Yeah, this is directed to Francine. Has state OSHA or federal OSHA made any type of specific requirements mandating vaccines?
So state OSHA, which is what we fall under, has not. There's nothing out from Cal OSHA. Federal OSHA, the last I looked, it was halted at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
so
Virginia?
Jim, just a quick question for Melanie to follow up on this county stuff, just out of curiosity. Can you just repeat what the county's stances on this?
So San Mateo County Public Health Officer does not take a stance on this. They have indicated that it is in the agency and organization dependent when it comes to mandating vaccines. That's where they're kind of at this point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chuck, I see, you have two recommendations in the report you prepared. I don't know if you want to make a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion. Thank you. Let me just deal with the first item. I'd like to make a motion to direct district's general counsel to prepare for consideration at the next regular meeting of the board, a resolution to protect the health and safety of district residents and employees by requiring COVID-19 vaccinations for all district employees.
Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion fails. Do you have a second motion, Chuck?
Well, I think if there's no second for the first motion, there'd be no, excuse me, the second motion wouldn't make sense.
All right.
I'm disappointed, I'll have to say. I think we owe our residents a safe environment, and having employees who are potentially carriers of COVID-19 is really a disservice. And I would like to see us, stand up for them, stand up for a safer workplace, and for the other employees who work in that environment.
Robert?
Yes, Jim, I would like to, I don't know if it's a motion or just directions to staff. I would like for maybe the chief and his staff to look into, come back to the board, look into protocols that are in place right now, and regarding, whether at the stations, in the main administration office, the protocols in terms of people coming in, people going out, how the facility is being maintained, and what happens to firefighters when they go out on a call, when they come back, the protocols for that as it relates to COVID and the protocols around that, around COVID-19 that's been mandated or suggested from the White House to our own internal policies.
Yeah, I just want to, I agree with you, Robert, and I recently heard a proposal or one agency that is requiring its unvaccinated employees to be tested, within 72 hours of reporting. That's why I'm disappointed in the county health officer for not weighing in on this issue.
Right.
Is that effective? Does it have value? You know, as a layperson, I don't know. I have to rely on the medical experts for such advice. And again, I'm disappointed that the county health officer has not offered more guidance in this area. Virginia?
Yeah, so along the same lines that Robert, has brought up, along the same lines of the issues that Robert's brought up, I would like to understand what the testing protocols are right now for the fire district. I just think back to when I was deployed to Reno for the Red Cross fires. This was the Caldor fire. And we actually had a couple of people test positive for COVID, and a lot of, most of the people who are homeless who came in from South Lake Tahoe were not vaccinated, nor did they want to be vaccinated. I mean, I'm fully vaccinated. This was back in September. And, we were tested, I want to say every couple of days, just because we knew that people were at risk of having COVID, and we actually had 2 positive cases confirmed. So what are we doing in terms of testing exactly? What are the protocols? What, that kind of process? I'd like to know that. And I'd like to know, Chief, if this subject can be brought up into that joint labor and management meeting again. What I don't want is for us to get into another impasse situation where we don't have a contract, or there's like this prolonged conflict. Something that I was involved with 10 years ago when I was elected to this board. Not to say that we're trying to jeopardize the health conditions of our constituents, but I would like to understand what is being discussed at that committee meeting, and if it makes sense or if it's appropriate to have a report or an update on that discussion if it comes up again, which I actually think it should be, considering this has now been on the agenda for the board twice.
Jim? I think there's a consensus around, you making those inquiries, Chief. You're working with your staff and, try to get some direction from the health, professionals in this area that could help guide us, developing, considering policy in this area. Rob?
Yeah, that's why I asked Francine about the OSHA requirements. And look, did you say it was in the 5th Circuit, Francine?
Yeah, that's where it said it was halted at the 5th Circuit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I understand Chuck's frustration relative to wanting to keep the community safe and people should be vaccinated. I'm vaccinated even to a booster myself, but it's an individual choice that I made myself. And there's a reason why these courts are being inundated with all these types of litigations. So I'm disappointed in that. I'm disappointed in our health director or health officer, where he hasn't made a decision relative to the entire county. There's no mandate concerning public safety professionals within our county. So I'm not a medical professional, but just like as Virginia mentioned too, we made a choice and we got vaccinated. So I'm just, I'm disappointed that the individuals that should be making these decisions and giving us guidance, that the health professionals are not doing their job. Thank you, Jim.
Virginia?
Yes, Mike, what does it take to get this topic to be discussed in your joint committee meeting?
You just did. You asked me to a couple minutes ago, and it'll be on the agenda for the next JLMC.
Okay, I just didn't know what that process was, if that's an agreement that needs to be discussed, or if one party can put it on.
Either party can put items on the agenda. So from this conversation, I have a few notes that I'm to look into the protocols in place about people going in and out of our facilities and how we maintain them. how our folks are responding to calls, the current testing protocols for the district, and a request to have this brought up to JLMC to get labor's input.
Well, at least
Anything
to
I missed?
understand where they're coming from, because right now I
Correct.
feel like we don't have that understanding. And so I don't agree with Chuck that the firefighters are for this or against this. We just don't know. But I think it could come out of that committee, that information, which will
I'll
be
put it on the
important for
agenda.
me. Thank you.
Absolutely, you bet.
All right, if there's nothing further, that brings us to the last item on the agenda, changing the December board of directors meeting date. We're scheduled to meet on the 21st now.
Yeah.
I know there's an expression of interest to move it to the 14th.
So we can't do that.
Is there any,
There's something under the couch too. I mean, under my,
Rob, I think you're not.
Interesting, Rob. Your business is all in the street, Rob.
I don't know. I'm going since 4 o'clock.
Is there a,
We all are, man.
is
I
there an
keep
interest?
looking.
Is there interest in moving the board meeting date to the 14th?
So, Tim,
Yeah, Virginia?
I don't really care either way, but I thought that when Robert and I were putting together the timeline for the chief search, Chief Schaefer had brought this up. So, I mean, I could go either way. I think the 14th would be, I mean, we've done it before a week earlier, but it doesn't matter either way, since we can probably be doing these meetings remotely anyway. The other times we've changed it, we've had in-person meetings, so it was a little different.
Robert?
I think it really depends on Francine's schedule, and because she got a lot on her plate right now, especially with trying to move this chief thing along. And we need to make sure that, and Francine, I need to hear from you regarding that too, just for my own personal decision-making process in terms of the schedule, how we had fixed the schedule, and by moving this up a week, how that may impact your schedule as it relates to this chief in terms of getting that together.
Planned on us
Francine.
moving.
There you go.
I think it will be fine to move it. I had planned in the schedule that it would be moved. So I think it would be, it would fit right in if we move it up to the 14th.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, it is, but Francine, by the same token, would it negatively impact you if it remained on the 21st?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
Either way works.
Okay, so it is set for the 21st right now. So, there's I don't know if anybody wants to make a motion to change it, because if there is no motion, then the default is the 21st. Well, hearing none.
Jim, I just would request that you ask Michelle, who's also involved in getting the materials ready and out and so forth, what if she had a preference?
Sure. Michelle, how would a date, how would keeping the 21st versus the moving it to the 14th affect you?
Thank you. That would be preferable to me to keep it on the 21st, only because if we moved it up to the 14th and we have 7th committee meetings on this December 7th, we'd have 2 days to move everything to the packet that goes out on Thursday, the 9th. So that would be a really tight schedule. So if it doesn't negatively impact anybody to keep it at the 21st, my preference would be the 21st.
All right, well, thank you.
Mike, does the chief
If
have?
no one wants to make a motion to change it to the 14th, then the default is to keep it on the 21st.
Well, can I ask the chief what he thinks too? Since his retirement is coming up.
So, Director, there's two ways to look at it. Number one is it could offer you a time that's a week earlier to move forward with the permanent fire chief position. At the same time, it's a very tight turnaround from committee meetings to moving to a board meeting. So it's kind of a balancing act there. If we're going to be moving forward with the rest of the work being done with the fire chief search, and we can wait until the 21st. I think Francine had it built in on the 14th as part of her timeline. So I would actually defer more to Francine because she's the one that puts the timeline together. For me, I can go either way. I just, I don't know which balance is better. Francine, does it work for the 21st or is it?
So it works for the 21st. The only thing is if there's notice, if the candidate waits to give notice until after the final contract is approved, then like Chief Schaefer said, it's going to delay it 1 week, you know. So if we're not concerned with that, then yeah, I'm fine. I can do either. Either works for me.
All right. Anybody want to make a motion on to move it? Okay, hearing none, it'll be, we'll keep it on the 21st. All right, reports and requests, committee reports. Chuck, finance.
We covered the things that were on the finance committee agenda tonight.
Okay, very good. Virginia, EPREP.
We covered everything that was on ePrep. The main thing was that we had the update from our OEM department, and I think that was a good update. And you know, hopefully we'll get more regular updates as well.
Okay. Strategic planning. You're muted, Rob.
I know. We discussed, which is what the chief, it was in his report about the management audit and review. We went over the COVID situation. Chuck, would you like to add anything?
Nope, that was it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jim.
In our HR committee, you know, considered the proposal for the staffing increase, which was discussed at length earlier. Any liaison reports?
None for me. I don't have any.
All right. Any reports, requests of directors? We had they were sprinkled throughout the evening. President's report. The farewell event for the chief is coming up. If you recall, at the Chief Schapelhuman's event, the board of directors purchased the tri-tip. It would be much appreciated if we were to do that again. I will go ahead and purchase it and send all of you an accounting. If you want to participate as last time, that would be welcome. So up to you. That's all I have. Michelle, is there any public comment?
Anybody has any public comment, please engage the raise hand feature or hit *9 on your phone. And I see no public comments.
And I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Uh-oh, we had too many seconds. Who second?
I think I heard Robert.
Robert
Second.
Solano.
I
Thank
think
you.
this one, Rob.
Okay, I'll
Right.
take it.
Call the vote, please.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Thanks, directors. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks, Francine.
Have a
Thanks,
good one.
Michelle.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.